The girl remembers how the gas was recently turned off and today, the electricity. At night, she wanders around the city feeling despair and hopelessness. Having met an acquaintance, she asks him not to bother her. She has almost no money left, only 20,000 won, which she needs to stretch out for 2 weeks. The man demands to give the money, even threatens, but the girl convinces him that she has nothing to pay with. He roughly tries to hold her back. The girl fights back in panic. She is overcome with fear. It seems to her that if she gives him her last money tomorrow, she will be left without food. Losing her balance, she falls. At that moment, a question flashes through her mind. Will her life really end so stupidly because of debts? Her life was full of suffering, a drinking father, a poor family. Her mother left, leaving her alone with a cruel reality. The girl remembers how she was able to escape from her father's clutches, but his debts and problems continued to follow her like a fatal connection. She saved money for her studies, worked, but her father took all her savings. Her efforts were destroyed time after time. Everything she worked so hard to earn disappeared like sand through her fingers. The family she never chose became the cause of her misery. She realizes that she has never had any support or happiness. Her only wish is to find peace free from pain and loneliness. The night sky echoes with a wish for a peaceful life. Destiny promises that in the east are sown seeds that will save the world. The girl hears the call of her name, Mabel. Waking up, she notices curious faces around her and begins to realize her new reality. Those present discuss how the baby has changed noticeably in just a few days. Gratitude for her health is expressed with a smile. Mabel realizes she has been reborn. She is surrounded by care, but she wonders if she can hear the voices of her new parents. Looking at the majestic palace, Mabel wonders if her terrible past will repeat itself despite the gentleness and kindness of those around her. She is shocked. She really is a princess. This luxury and the golden spoon in her hands give her hope for a better life. The servants look after the baby. Mabel realizes the huge difference between her former life and the one she is now immersed in. The girl realizes that her new life is connected with the great empire of Hermano, and she is one of the children of the emperor. Her father, Esteban, holding her in his arms, demonstrates his greatness and love, which fills the girl's new world with warmth. Mabel embraces her new name and status. She decides not to reject her destiny, but to embrace it with hope and courage. A little girl with pink hair, Mabel reveals that her mother died shortly after she was born, an event that marked the tragic beginning of her story. Mabel ponders how fathers usually turn their backs on their children if they are the cause of the loss of their wife. She wonders how Emperor Esteban will react. She hopes that he will ignore her, considering it the best option. However, through her sleep, Mabel hears a soft, friendly voice. She is gently lulled to sleep, promised that everything will be okay. Mabel is not sure if it was a vision or reality, but she feels warmth and care. She has a hard time adjusting to being a baby because she constantly feels sleepy. Mabel reflects on her new, unusual life. During the visit, Esteban enters the chambers. The nanny greets him with surprise and respect, and he makes a gesture calling her to silence. The emperor gently touches Mabel's face. She wakes up and feels a slight tickle from his touch, trying to figure out who is in front of her. Esteban, looking stern but interested, notices that Mabel has finally opened her eyes. She is surprised to see him for the first time. He asks playfully if the girl seems to be looking straight at him. Her blue eyes study the unfamiliar face with curiosity. Nanny notices that Mabel seems to recognize her father as she was crying just a moment ago. This remark causes Mabel an internal shock. Mabel looks at Esteban in surprise, realizing that he is her father. The emperor, pleased, confirms this, bringing warmth and joy to their first meeting. Mabel is shocked to discover that it is her father and not her brother. Esteban touches her gently, trying to connect with his daughter. Looking at her closely, Esteban calls Mabel a smart girl for recognizing him, and a tender bond is established between them. Esteban, touching Mabel tenderly, speaks of her mother Siana. His words are filled with sadness, but he expresses love and care for his daughter. The emperor promises Mabel that he will protect her at any cost, adding that she is now the most important thing in his life. When Mabel accidentally grabs his ornament, she sheepishly excuses herself. Esteban explains that children reflexively grab everything around them. Mabel, remembering her past life, is sad that she does not want to experience the love of her family, fearing betrayal. Memories of her past life intensify her pain. She sees her parents who kissed her like a jewel, but later, everything changed. She remembers the moment when her happy family fell apart. The fear of losing love once again fills her heart with a heavy burden. Mabel decides that she no longer needs love or affection. She chooses to be strong, protecting her heart from pain. A girl with a thoughtful expression looks out the window. Her thoughts are focused on the quiet life she dreams of, but everything changes. The map of the continent shows 3 powerful countries: the Ermano Empire, the hostile Devlin Empire, and the Holy Kingdom of Abelardo. The Ermano Empire is the largest in terms of territory, the Devlin Empire is the second largest, and between them is the religious Holy Kingdom. The Holy Kingdom of Abelardo is described as a place where there are no unbelievers, and the inhabitants completely follow the will of God Hades. On Mabel's birthday, an oracle appeared and proclaimed that a seed destined to save the world had been born in the east. On the same day, thunder and lightning struck the castle of the Ermano Empire, which became a landmark event for the entire continent. After the incident, it becomes clear that Mabel's baby is the prophetic seed. It is decided to send her to the Holy Kingdom. The people who have taken responsibility for Mabel's fate send letters to Esteban every day, trying to stay in touch with him. Esteban, the young Emperor Hermano, receives one of these letters. He looks upset, clearly under pressure from the situation. An irritated messenger bursts into the Emperor's presence, causing a storm of emotions. Esteban clenches his fist, realizing the complexity of what is happening. Esteban, sitting in the throne room, furiously condemns Abelardo, clenching his fists, his eyes full of anger and determination to resist injustice. The memories of the first Prince Oscar trouble Esteban, who realizes that the throne is out of his reach because of this rival. Mabel's soft face tucked into a blanket fills Esteban's heart with warmth. He considers her his most precious treasure. The thought of separation from Mabel causes Esteban pain. He firmly declares that he will not give his daughter to anyone, no matter how much the circumstances require it. His answer is categorical. He rejects the offer that could deprive him of Mabel. There is anger and certainty in his voice. The advisor is worried. He doesn't know how long he can ignore the outside pressure. The situation is becoming increasingly tense. Oscar ponders ways to resist the demands. He realizes he needs a trick to distract them from his family. The sudden encounter with the dishes and strawberries causes a stir. Guilt and regret are visible on Oscar's face as he looks at the mess. Esteban notices Oscar. The boy, despite his shyness, prepares to engage in conversation, aware of the importance of the moment. Oscar, as he gently greets Esteban, is touchingly portrayed his determination and humility, adding to the warmth of the scene. Oscar enters Esteban's office, tension in the air. Esteban asks him why he came, underlining the formality of the moment. Oscar timidly asks to see Mabel, with sincere desire written on his face. He is filled with childish hope, but is met with a cold refusal. Esteban responds to his arguments, sternly expressing confidence in his decision. Oscar tries to object, his emotions are running high, but his father remains adamant. Oscar insists that Esteban had previously promised to let him see Mabel in a month. However, his father calmly points out the reason, explaining his position. Esteban argues that Oscar is too impatient and could accidentally cause harm. He reminds the boy of past mistakes causing him embarrassment. In response to Oscar's despair, Esteban firmly states that the refusal is justified. The boy is outraged and tries to convince his father of his responsibility. Esteban reports that today is also impossible. Oscar, upset and disappointed, admits that he prepared for this day, did not even sleep last night. He tried to finish his classes early so he could see Mabel, but now he realizes that his efforts are in vain. Esteban sighs, understanding his feelings. Despite the refusal, Esteban tenderly places his hand on his son's head and asks him to follow him. This gesture shows his concern despite the stern words. Meanwhile, Mabel, still a baby, lies in her crib. Her thoughts are filled with boredom, and she reflects that being a child is not as easy as adults think. Little Mabel, lying helplessly in her crib, reflects on her limitations, feeling discomfort at not even being able to roll over. Despite her efforts to stay awake, fatigue takes over, and Mabel struggles to keep her eyes open, falling asleep under the comfort of her blankets. The servants are concerned about Mabel, noting her constant desire to sleep, although they would like her to have some food before bed. Emperor Esteban appears with First Prince Oscar, puzzled that Mabel is asleep again, and Oscar looks at her curiously. Mabel suddenly hears Esteban's voice, which brings her out of her sleep, causing mixed feelings. She is most worried about the Emperor. Esteban admires little Mabel, calling her cute, though she frowns displeased by his unexpected appearance. Oscar, seeing his sister for the first time, freezes in surprise, experiencing a new interest and desire to get to know her better. The servants explain that Mabel's eyesight is not yet fully developed, and she most likely does not look at Oscar, which causes him mixed emotions. Oscar doesn't hear the explanation, happy that Mabel seems to be paying attention to him and admires her cuteness. Mabel, tired and irritated by the attention, mentally asks everyone to leave so she can enjoy her peace and quiet again. Mabel, having no teeth, tried to express her desire but only moaned. Her thoughtfulness surprised Oscar, who was already expecting the first word. Hearing the word Appa, Oscar was delighted, certain that this was addressed to him, but his joy was interrupted by doubts and the cry, "No way!" Esteban assumed Mabel meant Appa, Dad, which made Oscar even more confused. He was sure Mabel wasn't talking to him. The nanny, tired of their arguments, mentally asked for peace. Her expression of despair became a signal that the situation needed to be taken under control. Mabel, it turned out, just wanted to convey that she was hungry. The nanny quickly began to prepare the mixture, and the prince continued to be surprised. Mabel watched Oscar with distrust as she sat in her nanny's arms. He clearly intended to stay and watch her feed. Mabel suddenly noticed a resemblance to her father, which made her even more amazed. She looked at Oscar, wondering about his personality. Oscar was surprised to realize that Mabel was looking at him. He sensed some special attention from the baby. The nanny decided to resort to drastic measures. Under the watchful eyes of Esteban and Oscar, Mabel finally began feeding. Mabel tried to speed things up to get away from the attention. Her concentration was endearing despite her underlying displeasure. Mabel looks thoughtfully at the bottle of milk. Her breathing becomes heavy, and she thinks it has to do with her baby body. Esteban reaches out to take the bottle. Mabel is confused by his confident and commanding tone, but is forced to comply. Esteban smiles softly and promises to feed Mabel himself. She is surprised by his kindness, but wary of this sudden decision. Seeing Esteban smile, Mabel is shocked by his words. Her childish reaction is full of emotion and unwillingness to accept help. Mabel categorically refuses to be fed and loudly protests. Esteban, despite her protests, remains confident and calm. Esteban continues to feed Mabel, although she is not happy about the situation. The awkwardness of the moment causes her great irritation. Despite his protests, Mabel gradually gives in and eats her irritation mixed with surprise at Esteban's persistence. Esteban praises Mabel for eating everything. His gaze remains calm, but to her it seems challenging. Mabel is relieved to finish her meal, but remains dissatisfied. Esteban notes her success with a slight smile. The servants worry about Esteban's condition, but he assures them that all is well. The tension eases, but Mabel still feels vulnerable. Emperor Esteban holds Mabel in his arms and assures her that the milk she regurgitates is holy water, filling the scene with a strange pathos. Mabel, stunned by Esteban's words, looks at him with incomprehension, and he is glad that the girl eats with appetite despite her bewilderment. Mabel ponders what Esteban said and tries to comprehend whether he really believes that regular milk is holy water, which seems absurd to her. The girl continues to be surprised by the Emperor's strange antics, wondering if everyone else around her really thinks his behavior is normal. The servants, watching what is happening, smile and create a warm and joyful atmosphere around which causes Mabel even more bewilderment. Oscar, watching Mabel, experiences a strange feeling and decides to intervene, assuming that he too notices his father's unusual behavior. Oscar cautiously asks permission to hold Mabel, but does not find the right moment, remaining embarrassed in front of the Emperor. Esteban reluctantly accepts that no one else can care for Mabel the way he does, holding her with enviable confidence. The Emperor reflects on how much he is attached to Mabel, putting her first and rejecting the opportunity to share her attention with anyone else. Esteban, looking at his daughter, declares that her existence has convinced him of the absence of God, accompanying his words with a beaming smile. Esteban, beaming and energetic, suddenly bursts into Mabel's room. She thinks sadly that she had prayed for a different future, less noisy attention. Mabel lies in bed and wonders why she has to put up with so much fuss. Even Prince Oscar comes unannounced. Her gaze falls on a hanging chandelier. She is distracted, admiring the structure, but protests when she realizes that the attention on it is preventing her from concentrating. Elsewhere, Esteban nearly breaks a family heirloom, sending the servants into a panic. But his clumsy stunt only highlights his eccentricities. The people around discuss the news. An egg of a divine beast has been found in the forest. Mabel wonders in bewilderment whether this is really possible. They say that the beast resembles a cat with golden fur. She doubts it, considering it a rumor, but involuntarily becomes interested. Listening to Larima and Xavier argue, she decides to use the moment to train, focusing on achieving her small goals. Gradually, she develops her fingers and learns to hold toys. This small victory fills her with confidence and pride. She decides to make the training more difficult by trying to roll over on her own. It takes a lot of effort, but she doesn't give up. Every step of her progress seems like a miracle. She understands that even in small victories there is great meaning and joy. Mabel decides to learn to lift her head, but her first attempt ends in failure. She makes disgruntled sounds expressing her disappointment. Trying hard, she strains herself with all her might but fails again. Her face expresses fatigue and frustration, which makes her wonder when she will grow up. Frustrated, she realizes that she can't even get up and gets angry, unable to do anything, even kick the blanket. Oscar peeks into her room, seeing that she is awake. His happy face lights up with a smile as he says that he noticed she was awake. Oscar runs up to Mabel's cradle, his eyes shining with happiness, and he says her name with genuine joy, as if meeting her fills his day with light. Oscar reaches out to Mabel, but the maid stops him, reminding him of the need to maintain cleanliness. She is clearly concerned for the princess's health. Oscar is embarrassed, realizing that his hands are dirty. He promises to wash and change his clothes so as not to upset anyone and to stay close. As she leaves, the maid wonders how the king will react to what has happened. She assumes that he is probably already aware of it. Mabel, despite her fatigue, makes another attempt to raise her head, but her efforts end in failure and she feels even weaker. Seeing Mabel sweating, the maid calls for help, thinking it's a cold. However, the girl realizes it's just from overexerting her small body. The room was in a state of alarm. Mabel, lying in bed, attracted attention by her apparent illness. The servants rushed about, worried about her condition. Oscar, the first prince, was disconcerted by the noise and soon learned that a doctor had been called. He was worried and could not hide his confusion. Upon hearing the news that Mabel was supposedly ill, Oscar rushed to her with alarm, wanting to verify her condition. He ran awkwardly to Mabel, begging her not to get sick. The girl, half asleep, barely understood what was happening. The nanny, with a worried expression, convinced Oscar that Mabel's weak voice indicated a serious illness. The girl mentally resented it. Hiding her irritation, Mabel decided to let others think what they wanted, hoping for a quick clarification of the situation. Esteban, the emperor, went to Mabel's chambers with a worried look. The servants begged him to wait for the doctor, but he was in a hurry to see the girl. Mabel, exhausted with embarrassment, wondered when she would finally be understood. She was irritated by the excessive panic of those around her. Esteban burst into the room, overcome with worry for Mabel. His concern was reflected in his every move. When the doctor arrived, Mabel mentally breathed a sigh of relief, determined to quickly prove to everyone that she was healthy and put an end to the chaos. Mabel slowly comes to opening her eyes, her gaze confused between sleep and reality. She feels weak and confused. Esteban, leaning over Mabel, shows concern and gives the order to find a doctor. His eyes reflect his concern for her condition. The physician explains that Mabel's condition is stable and that her weakness is merely due to overwork. He assures the emperor that there is no threat. Mabel is surprised by the words about fatigue, but quickly realizes that her condition could have been caused by magic that manifested in the midst of training. Esteban, slightly reassured by the explanations, still continues to observe Mabel's condition. She, seeing his concern, feels a slight warmth inside. The servants and attendants also show concern and thank the heavens that Mabel is well. She notices the sincerity of their joy. In Esteban's arms, Mabel realizes how strangely comfortable she feels around him. His warmth seems strange but pleasant to her. The memories take us back to a meeting where they discussed the captured enemy, one of the Empire's greatest threats. Esteban remains focused. Diablo Devlin. The captured enemy poses a serious threat. Esteban ponders what is happening, realizing that the situation requires immediate action. Rumors abound in Devlin about the monster's ruthlessness and cruelty. It is called a devil leaving destruction in its wake. The army reports that Devlin recently attacked their territory, causing bloodshed, giving them an opportunity to finally capture the mysterious enemy. The prisoner is a shocker. He is a child. This news is stunning, making you wonder what is hidden behind the image of the devil. Soldiers report that a child crossed the border fleeing from something. He was captured, but the reasons for his escape remain a mystery. In the courtroom, the officers discuss the strangeness of the situation. Emperor Esteban orders that security be increased and that the child be questioned. Amidst serious questions, news of Mabel's illness is heard. Esteban is alarmed and immediately heads to her, leaving everything else behind. Worried courtiers discuss Princess Mabel, whose birth has caused a stir. Her features resemble those of the late Empress. People recall that Mabel inherited the emperor's blue eyes and blonde hair, a connection that brings special attention to the palace. Concern for the princess's health grows among the servants. The loss of the Empress has increased their devotion to the child who has become the center of their concerns. Under the sounds of the heart's alarm, emotions boil in the palace. The fate of the princess and the mysterious child are united in an atmosphere of mystery and anticipation. Emperor Esteban once called the bloody has returned to the past to change fate. His determination to change his destiny is unwavering. Mabel, the empire's only hope, has attracted the attention of those around her due to her weakness. The servants are concerned about her condition and are worried about her health. Her peaceful sleep is taken as a sign of hope, and the praying servants ask that she grow up healthy and keep the eternal flame of the empire. The palace is constantly in turmoil. Mabel is surrounded by care and attention, but she finds it too tiring and inconvenient. Oscar takes care of Mabel's comfort by instructing the servants. He sincerely tries to make her life in this complicated palace more pleasant. The bustle around Mabel continues. She is surrounded by care and troubles. She feels the excitement of everyone around her but remains calm. Mabel has a hard time getting used to the inconveniences, but she tries to adapt. Despite the care, she does not like the surroundings. Her first walk is a big moment. She appreciates the stroller and the adults' efforts, but she would like more peace. The walk reveals to her the grandeur of the imperial palace. She is amazed by its scale and beauty, studying everything with interest. Mabel sums up the day. The palace is truly impressive, and the walk was fascinating, although she would have liked more privacy. The servants smile as they tell her how sunny and pleasant it is outside. Mabel, with shining eyes, finds herself the center of attention, delighted by the warmth and beauty of nature. As her carriage emerges into the street, Mabel feels a sharp chill. The servants try to warm her, wondering how the weather has changed so quickly. Oscar is concerned that Mabel might be freezing. He suggests doing something to help her, showing concern and consideration. Little Mabel, hidden in her carriage, sees what is happening through lace curtains. Everything around her seems mysterious and new. Esteban suddenly appears on the street, surprising everyone, including Mabel, who is wary and wonders about his unexpected visit. Esteban picks Mabel up, lifting her gently. She looks slightly surprised, but his concern brings her comfort in the cold weather. Esteban notices that Mabel is wearing an expensive magical cloth, which causes the servants to admire her. They discuss how valuable the gift was. The carriage stops at the northern forest. The servants arrange a cozy place for a picnic, offering Mabel to enjoy nature and silence away from the palace. Mabel sits, enjoying the peace and warmth of the care of servants and friends. The bright rays of the sun and the nature around her fill her with joy. The final scene shows how much everyone cares for Mabel. Her smile shows how much happiness this walk brings her. A little girl. Mabel looks thoughtfully at the sky, amazed at its endless blue, seeing such a bright shade for the first time. She remembers her past, where the sky was dark and black and stars were rare. The past seems so distant to her. Mabel sits in the stroller, feeling tired, not from wanting to sleep, but from strong emotions. Oscar holds her carefully. Oscar gently assures Mabel that she can rest easy. His kind eyes radiate warmth and concern, which calms her down. Oscar, along with the maid, watches Mabel to make sure she is not cold. She wonders why he is so attached to her. In the hallway, Oscar energetically announces that he has finished his business in order to spend time with Mabel, deciding to postpone training. He explains to the maid that he wants to be close to Mabel as this is her first trip outside. His face lights up with joy. Mabel reflects that she never considered the Emperor's family to be her real family. She feels like an outsider in this world. She reflects on her birth in this family and does not know how to behave with its members. However, she does not blame them for her feelings. Meanwhile, another character watching Oscar and Mabel admires their tenderness but encounters an unexpected comic moment. Mabel, while with other people in the clearing, notices an unusual light. People begin to wonder what happened. Mabel, realizing that there is a divine being in front of her, feels surprise and excitement and looks at him in fascination. A mythical beast appears before Mabel, a golden, shining creature surrounded by flowers, causing delight and admiration among all present. Mabel realizes that this is not just any animal, but a legendary mythical beast she has heard about, and she is eager to learn more. She reflects on the fact that she has never encountered such creatures in her past, and she is overcome with curiosity about what it looks like up close. Oscar and the others suggest going to see the mythical creature up close, eagerly gathering together for this amazing spectacle. Mabel, upset, is afraid of being left behind and worries that the others will go without her while she is unable to go. Oscar picks Mabel up, offering to take her with him. She is delighted and smiles, relying on his support. Mabel, full of enthusiasm, exclaims that she also wants to be a part of this event, expressing her passion and excitement. Mabel suddenly realizes her courage becomes slightly embarrassed, but continues to strive to meet the mysterious, mythical beast. A vision of a wild cat appears in the meadow, which causes delight among the heroes. But suddenly a sound is heard, and the birds fly away in panic. Mabel, in the hands of a maid, surprises those around her with her behavior attracting attention with her unusual reactions and bright eyes. Oscar anxiously asks when Mabel will be able to talk and watches her, not realizing that her behavior could be a signal. Suddenly, Mabel makes a sound similar to meow, which shocks everyone who hears her, creating a wave of surprise and bewilderment. The servants discuss, not believing their ears, that Mabel said meow, and the girl herself clearly realizes what she has done. The general reaction of the characters shows that they were expecting special signs from Mabel, but her strange behavior only adds to the intrigue. As Mabel reflects on why she cares so much about the reactions of others, she feels that her actions evoke strong emotions. Mabel realizes that because she is in a child's body, her behavior becomes impulsive, but her mind still remains that of an adult. Inside the small body, Yoon-gyeol is still present, and this discovery makes her think about her future and actions. Looking down at her small hands, Mabel reflects on how her new body and age affect her decisions and those around her. Mabel starts speaking for the first time, surprising everyone around her. The maid is happy, calling her a genius, but the girl herself is embarrassed by her first word. Her inarticulate "abu" causes a storm of delight among the adults, but Prince Oscar remains indifferent, thinking that she should speak more meaningfully. Mabel chooses meow as her first word, surprising everyone. The prince is disappointed because the cat turned out to be more important than him. Oscar feels pain from the realization that her attention is not on him. Mabel's gaze becomes serious. She watches his emotions. The girl notices that something has shaken the prince, and as if trying to console him, directs her actions towards him, surprising those around her. The maid offers Oscar to hug the princess. He is confused, but obeys the request, feeling slightly embarrassed. Mabel reflects that after her rebirth, she never asked to be the first to hug her, but seeing the prince's pain, she changes her mind. The prince finally takes her in his arms, which becomes a touching moment for him. Mabel hugs Oscar for the first time, strengthening the bond between them. The girl keeps repeating meow, surprising everyone with her persistent interest. Oscar tries to understand what she wants to show him. Mabel hints that she is interested in the mythical beast that appeared at her birth. Oscar agrees to explore the place with her. In a forest clearing, the children listen intently, but there is silence all around and no one is visible. Questions raise doubts, but attention is focused on the search. When talking about recent events, the friends can't decide whether it was a joke or reality. Their argument brightens the atmosphere, but a mystery still remains. Oscar holds Mabel carefully in his arms, assuring her that everything is okay. Despite his words, doubts still linger in his soul, forcing him to turn back. Mabel stares into the distance, trying to take in the details. Her blue eyes are determined, and suddenly a faint glimmer catches her attention. Suddenly, a slight movement catches the group's attention. Mabel expresses delight, and Oscar tries to figure out what happened so he can calm everyone down. Mabel is amazed by the sight of a golden mythical beast. The family discusses its beauty as the beast looks at the girl, sparkling with magic. The girl remembers that she was reborn in a new world and is surprised by the animal's interest. She feels observed and fascinated by its behavior. Oscar holds Mabel in his arms as the beast circles around. Mabel notices his attention to her but suddenly sneezes and the beast runs away. Mabel is disappointed that the beast has disappeared. Nanny urges them to return, noticing that the girl has caught a cold in the fresh air. Larima and Clavier are punished by Madame for the mess left behind by the incident. Oscar promises to return to play again. Mabel reflects that the walk was interesting because of the encounter with the mythical beast. She realizes that going outside can be beneficial. The nanny is worried about Mabel's health. The girl is bundled up to avoid catching a cold. Oscar explains that she was cold. Mabel notices a stranger with green eyes and a mysterious air. His arrogant appearance makes her wonder who he is. The nanny calls the man Duchess Donovan, and Mabel remembers that she has heard the name before but cannot remember the details. Oscar and Mabel continue their journey, reflecting on the events of the day. The girl realizes that her new world is full of surprises and possibilities. Duchess Pacifica Donovan, mother of the first Prince Oscar, is known for her steely will, but after her divorce from the Emperor, she remained strong and became a duchess. The Emperor was married twice. His first wife was Pacifica Donovan. Their marriage was one of convenience, but after Oscar was born, they separated. Pacifica overcame the resistance of the courtiers and took the place of the Duchess. The Emperor's second wife was the sweet and gentle Shiana Gardenia. After Mabel's birth, Shiana passed away, leaving her daughter an orphan. A month passed as the court adjusted to the new reality. Oscar felt insecure in his mother's presence. He felt like he was an unwanted child born from another marriage. For Pacifica, Mabel is just a reminder of the Emperor's second wife. Oscar, on the other hand, is trying his best to hold on and not show weakness. Mabel, although under the care of a nanny, decided to run away for an adventure. Oscar was worried, trying to prevent her from disappearing. Panic gripped the guards when it became clear that the child had slipped out of the palace. The guards, taken by surprise, froze in surprise. Pacifica notices Oscar's anxiety and concern for his little sister and begins to realize that there is a special bond between the children. Despite all the obstacles, Mabel feels safe under her brother's gaze. She reaches out to him, and he, for the first time, smiles sincerely. An alarming cry is heard throughout the city as a dark figure with scarlet eyes appears among the chains. The magical energy around him frightens everyone. Suddenly it becomes clear that this figure is a child. His gaze is cold, and the surrounding knights cannot move due to fear. The knights try to catch the boy, but his magic destroys the castle's defenses. People begin to panic, realizing his power. In the chaos of the street, Oscar screams at his nanny to leave immediately. His gaze is intense, he senses danger. Mabel, sitting in the carriage, suddenly feels a strange connection. Her blue eyes meet the boy's scarlet eyes and the world freezes. At this moment, she feels as if they are alone in this space. Her heart is filled with a strange feeling of anxiety. Oscar notices her condition and says that they need to leave this place immediately. He is clearly concerned about the threat posed by the child. The nanny quickly takes the children away, trying not to look back. However, Oscar constantly checks to make sure the boy is not following them. Chaos continues in the castle. The knights scream, trying to catch the child, but his strength proves too great for them. Mabel looks out the window, trying to understand what happened. She can't shake the feeling that this child will change their destiny. The magnificent palace amazes with its architectural forms, and the calm atmosphere is unexpectedly disturbed when an alarming message suddenly sounds. The young man in the elegant suit is amazed by what he hears. The Devlin demon has become active. His tension instantly turns to panic. A figure of a demon appears on the stage, imprisoned in a magic circle. Breaking through the shackles, the demon goes out of control right in the palace. The young man is stunned. Fate has brought Their Highness Mabel into danger on the very first day of the walk, which seems like an incredible coincidence. Despite the apparent safety, the man cannot shake off his fear for Mabel. His nervousness becomes almost comical. Emperor Esteban holds the baby Mabel in his arms, his cold gaze suggesting his inevitable rage when he learns of what has happened. The young man describes that the demon lost consciousness having completely exhausted his magical powers, but he cannot explain the details of the incident. The scene switches to the Emperor's quiet office, where he is calmly going about his business while the young man continues to think, restlessly. The Emperor notices him and he nervously tries to explain himself. Trying to justify himself, he barely holds back his embarrassment before Esteban's stern gaze. He recounts Mabel's encounter with the demon, trying to convince her that nothing serious happened, but the internal tension remains. Esteban sat quietly at the table with a cup of tea in his hands. Everything was not as scary as he expected, and he was lucky. The smiling young man reported that Mabel had seen a mystical creature and said the word meow, causing him surprise. The teacup fell out of Esteban's hands and broke, which caused shock. The young man was horrified because the cup was incredibly expensive. Esteban turned to his assistant Gustav, demanding an explanation of what had happened. The atmosphere around him was becoming increasingly tense. Gustav reported that Mabel had encountered a creature known as the Devlin Devil and called it meow, which further excited Esteban. Objects began breaking in the room. Esteban asked his assistant to explain why the events with Mabel were troubling him so much. The young man was nervous, fearing that even the surrounding ceramics could be damaged. The entire national heritage was at risk. Esteban called the situation a disgrace, demanding to see Mabel immediately. Gustav followed him to control the situation. The Emperor was outraged that Mabel's meow was more important than a diplomatic meeting with a prisoner from another country that was waiting. Mabel lay on her bed, complaining about the heat. She remembered the walk where she had merely sneezed, and she worried that it had caused more chaos. Mabel, a girl with pink hair, lies in a luxurious crib. She reflects on how strange it is to be in the imperial palace and tries to get used to her new surroundings. Mabel remembers the boy with red eyes she met earlier, a look that left a strange sense of unease that won't go away. Emperor Esteban enters the hall with his entourage. He asks how Mabel's walk went. The girl notices that Esteban is watching her closely. Esteban lifts Mabel into his arms, surprised by her weight. His companions explain that the girl has just eaten and covered her with clothes so that she doesn't catch a cold. The Emperor examines the toy, which he had not noticed before, and asks if it has been checked for poison. The servants confirm that everything is fine, but he insists on being careful. Mabel watches Esteban interrogate those around him, trying to understand his behavior, realizing that he genuinely cares. Suddenly, Mabel makes a meowing sound which confuses Esteban. He realizes that this is her first word and begins to laugh. Mabel continues to say meow, realizing that it is the only word she knows. Everyone present finds this funny and cute. Esteban jokes that Mabel probably likes cats more than people, and he happily accepts her strange concept. At the end, he says that since she likes cats so much, she should see the forest in the northern part of the palace where one special cat lives. Emperor Esteban holds Mabel, his daughter, only 2 months old, and announces that he is giving her the northern forest, shocking everyone around him. Mabel is surprised by this decision, her bright eyes expressing incomprehension. The assistants clarify that this is an order from the Emperor, not a joke. Esteban confidently declares that the forest's gift to his daughter is an act of love. The assistants are perplexed because Mabel is still too young to appreciate the gift. The Emperor's aides discuss the landscape, but Esteban thinks it is important to Mabel. The little girl's expression makes him think. One of the assistants tries to explain that the forest is not the best gift. Esteban ignores this and remains true to his decision. The Emperor decides to give Mabel a castle as well. His assistants are shocked by his extravagance, and the little girl still looks dissatisfied. Esteban adds that the northern forest is hers to keep. Mabel looks at her father with distrust, and the assistants whisper about his oddities. Time passes. Mabel grows up. Her life is surrounded by attention and luxury. However, the Empire begins preparations for the visit of important guests. Priests from the Holy Kingdom of Abelardo arrive at the imperial palace, claiming a connection with the gods. This event underlines the importance of their visit. Emperor Esteban greets his guests, presenting the grandeur of his court. All eyes are focused on his confidence and charisma. Esteban, sitting in the throne room, reflects with cold contempt on the representatives of the temple, whom he considers insignificant and hypocritical. The priest and the scholar appear hinting at the unexpectedness of the visit. Esteban expresses his surprise with restraint, hiding his irritation. The guest thanks for the support, promising important research results. Then he mentions Princess Mabel, causing tension in the room. Esteban instantly corrects his guest, emphasizing the correct name of the princess. His gaze becomes stern, revealing a hidden connection with Mabel. The name Winter of the prophecy is associated with the birth of the princess. The Holy King declares it her second name, emphasizing her divine significance, while fate already begins to weave its thread. Esteban, outraged by the decision, rejects the authority of the oracle. He questions the prophecy's connection to his daughter, doubting the veracity of the words imposed on him by the Holy Kingdom. In distant Hermano, Mabel is born, and at that moment a bright bolt of lightning splits the sky. These events are linked as a fateful coincidence, emphasizing her unique nature and connection to the prophecy. The Holy King, with a sly smile, awaits Esteban's reaction. In his hands is an object that should clarify everything. Esteban, despite his doubts, shows internal tension. Esteban remembers how his character changed after the wedding, becoming softer. But when faced with the threats of fate, he wonders if he will return to his former harshness to protect his daughter. Mabel is a baby just beginning her life, and Esteban resents the idea of sending her to the Holy City, fearing for her fate and considering the prophecy insufficient as a basis for such decisions. The Holy King gives Esteban a relic of the past, an ornate pendant that promises to reveal the truth. It is a transfer of power and proof of the previous emperor's past assistance from the Holy Kingdom. Esteban sees the pendant as a link to the past, but resents the idea of paying for the debts of the previous emperor at the cost of his daughter. He considers it unfair and questions the intentions. Esteban makes a strong statement that he will never sell his daughter. The Holy King tries to convince him that the prophecy is about protecting Mabel, but this only increases the internal conflict. Esteban's heart burns with determination. He realizes that he cannot leave his daughter, and he ponders ways to keep her safe, despite the pressure and fateful prophecies. Esteban reflects on how difficult it is to deal with Abelardo's representatives. Although he had hoped that the enemy would be stubborn to the end, they made an unexpected request, which complicated the situation. Abelardo's representatives request an audience with the princess. Esteban understands that this was their real goal. He feels compelled to agree despite his inner resistance. Esteban remembers the old deal between the previous emperor and the Holy King that left him with no choice. He agrees to their request but sets a condition to keep the situation under control. Esteban demands that the audience take place in his presence. He sets strict rules. Do not approach the princess closer than 20 meters, do not touch, and do not use magic power. Esteban adds another condition. If Mabel starts crying, the audience will end immediately. He sees the absurdity of these demands but is determined to protect her. Abelardo's representative is shocked by Esteban's behavior, considering him overly emotional. Esteban makes it clear that he will protect Mabel at any cost if there is a threat. Meanwhile, Mabel is quietly in her room. Her nannies and maids are busy with their work, and there is an unusual silence around. She dreams of trying something new on her own. The girl tries to roll over on her own in bed, determined to cope. Her internal monologues are filled with naivety and hope, but she encounters difficulties. Mabel continues to try, but she feels tired. She is frustrated by how difficult it is to accomplish tasks that seem simple to others. Her thoughts are filled with conflicting emotions. At this point, Oscar appears with a book in his hands. He visits Mabel again, although she does not respond to his visits. Mabel is surprised by his persistence, but chooses not to respond. On the cozy stage, Oscar decides to read Mabel a book. The girl, looking at her brother, assumes that he will bring something boring. However, the expression of interest on Oscar's face promises that the evening will be unusual. Oscar opens the book and Mabel sees children's drawings on the pages, assuming that they are fairy tales. Her eyes fill with hope, but everything changes when the text turns out to be anything but childish. Oscar suddenly begins reading about the author's philosophical musings, which leaves Mabel perplexed. She realizes that the text is completely inappropriate for a 3-month-old child. Mabel is confused because, despite the intellectual style of the text, she cannot understand why Oscar, who is 6 years old, is reading such books. Her thoughts are focused on the inappropriateness of what is happening. Oscar continues reading, claiming that the text could be useful. Mabel is indignant, believing that children would not like such books, but Oscar is surprised by her lack of interest. Oscar ruefully admits that he expected Mabel to like the text. The girl reflects with annoyance on how such a complex book could interest a baby. Oscar promises to bring something more appropriate next time, hoping to please Mabel. She feels the tension growing but smiles, hiding her emotions. There is a noise in the room. Mabel notices that it is different from what usually accompanies the Emperor's appearance. The servants are also wary. Emperor Esteban enters the hall accompanied by mysterious people in white robes. Everyone bows in greeting, creating a solemn atmosphere. Mabel, lying in her cradle, feels the tension of what is happening. She watches the Emperor and the strange procession, wondering what has begun. Mabel lies on her bed surrounded by soft light. She feels strange sounds and movements filling her space. Her thoughts are confused, but one thing is clear: something inside her is seething and causing anxiety. The presence of the white-robed stranger is unsettling. His gaze is kind and bright, but Mabel feels his power penetrating her core. She wonders, does he see her true self? The priest standing nearby is amazed at Mabel's health and her filling with holy energy. The closer he gets, the more her condition worsens. Mabel feels herself becoming weak. Emperor Esteban reminds the priest of the conditions given earlier. The priest's gaze softens, and he confirms that he remembers the agreement, promising to follow the instructions. The priest expresses admiration, seeing the main character of the prophecy before him. Esteban, however, remains calm, not rushing to confirm or deny the words of the oracles. Mabel feels uneasy and confused inside. She catches their conversation but does not fully understand it. A strange premonition fills her soul, as if they were talking about her. Mabel feels that her condition is connected to the priest's presence. His divine power presses on her consciousness. She begins to wonder if this could be connected to her destiny. Esteban reassures Mabel that everything is under control. A priest from the distant lands of Abelardo wants to see her to verify her true nature. The priest confirms that he has come to the audience to meet Mabel. His warm, almost mystical gaze shows that he has deep respect for the girl. As the meeting ends, the priest hints at the capture of someone important. His words penetrate deep into the hearts of those present. It becomes clear that the future depends on decisions made here and now. A mysterious young man with the ability to use magic without intermediaries is held in place by chains and magical crystals. Even under strict control, his powers are fearsome. Mabel ponders the nickname Devlin's Devil. She thought it was funny, but Esteban's words hint at a great power that could trouble even the sacred kingdom. Esteban is disturbed by the mention of Devlin. He understands that there is something sinister behind it and prepares for possible threats, assessing the situation with cold calculation. The advisor warns Esteban of the consequences of returning the hostages. He points out that this could affect Hermano's empire and asks him to be vigilant in his actions. The priests, bidding farewell to Esteban, call Mabel Princess Hermano. Their departure leaves behind a sense of uneasiness, as if there were a secret hidden behind the politeness. As the priests leave the room, Mabel feels her nausea suddenly disappear. She is surprised because there was no hostility in the guests' gazes. As the priests leave the palace, they leave behind a strange glow. Mabel tries to understand what happened and why their presence caused her such strong feelings. Oscar notices that Abelardo left faster than expected, which makes him wonder about hidden plans that could threaten the peace of the empire. Esteban is convinced that the Holy King will not leave the matter so easily. He predicts new moves on the part of the enemy and prepares for possible maneuvers. Mabel reflects on her connection to the aforementioned Devlin Empire and magical intrigue. She realizes that what she heard today has a direct bearing on her destiny. Little Mabel wonders why the Emperor resists her so much. She wonders what a powerful man and a baby he calls by a name so unusual to her, Winter, could possibly have in common. Esteban interrupts her thoughts with a gentle smile. He reassures the girl, hinting that she does not need to understand everything. Mabel is surprised by his caring tone, wondering if she is being overprotective. At night, the silence in the palace is broken only by the muffled voices of the nannies and guards. They decide to leave the sleeping girl alone, so as not to disturb her peace, and quietly leave her room. Once they leave, Mabel breathes a sigh of relief at being alone. She is glad that night is the only time she can be completely alone with herself without feeling constantly watched. The girl decides to practice magic, but all her attempts are unsuccessful. Her efforts do not bring results, and this causes her disappointment. She dreams of making progress as soon as possible. Despite her failures, Mabel feels supported by her father and brother. Their daily attention leaves her confused as they do not know her true thoughts and goals. She understands that she is being deceived by the feelings of those close to her who see her as an innocent baby. This makes her even more eager to grow up quickly in order to leave these walls. Her thoughts are interrupted by an unexpected noise. The girl tenses up because the sound is not coming from the next room. The shutters from where the wind is blowing alarm her because the nanny would never leave them open. Looking around, she notices a silhouette entering her room. The stranger moves closer and closer, making her heart beat faster with fear and tension. In this frightening silence, Mabel is left alone with her guesses. She feels how the approach of this man threatens to disturb her fragile peace and plans for the future. Mabel, lying in her crib, hears footsteps and realizes that she cannot turn around to see the intruder. Her anxiety grows because someone has secretly entered her chambers through the window. Realizing that it is not the Emperor or Oscar, Mabel tries to figure out who this man is and why he is sneaking into the nursery in the middle of the night while everyone is asleep. Hearing familiar footsteps, Mabel begins to suspect that this is the same person who came earlier. Her eyes widen in anticipation of what will happen next. The mysterious man turns out to be a priest. He softly says that she is awake, and Mabel realizes that her suspicions have been confirmed. The priest says he has come to take her away. Mabel is horrified, thinking he is trying to kidnap her, and decides she can scream for help. She begins to cry loudly, attracting the attention of the priest. He is confused seeing Mabel's tears and asks her to calm down, but the child cries louder. Mabel's cries become so loud that the priest becomes nervous, fearing that someone will hear the noise. She, however, is triumphant at his confusion. The priest tries to calm Mabel down, but she only increases her screaming, trying her best to draw attention to her situation. Suddenly, someone else appears in the room, a shadow in the dim light reaching out to Mabel. She screams in panic for them to stay away. Mabel, realizing that she is in a child's body and physically powerless, decides to act cunningly. She continues to cry in order to cause chaos and thwart her captors. Mabel, finding herself in the body of a baby, experiences acute dissatisfaction with her situation. She tries to move, but her body is not under control, causing her despair. She makes great efforts to overcome this weakness. Having gathered her strength, Mabel stubbornly continues her attempts to move. Her efforts, despite pain and fatigue, bring her first success, but at the same time she finds herself in an awkward position, attracting the attention of those around her. Overcoming the tension, Mabel finally manages to turn over. This discovery brings her joy and pride, filling her with hope. She feels victorious in the struggle with her helpless body. Suddenly, her joy is marred by noise. Emperor Esteban, concerned about the situation, intervenes, causing everyone present to freeze. His stern voice draws attention, increasing the tension. Esteban casts an accusing glance at the woman present, demanding an explanation. She tries to justify herself, claiming that she did not harm Mabel. His intense attention to the situation heightens the drama of what is happening. Mabel remains in the center of the action, lying in an awkward position. Esteban continues to find out what happened, increasing his concern for his daughter. Mabel draws attention to herself, reminding him of her fragility and vulnerability. Esteban draws his sword in anger, preparing to deal. He demands confirmation of the accusations, and the prisoner, in fear, swears by God that he is telling the truth. Those around him are tense and afraid of his determination. Mabel remembers the kidnapper trying to grab her but not being able to touch her. She decides to intervene, realizing that she does not want innocents to die, and begins to act with caution. Mabel tries to help Esteban. However, turning around and acting on her own is not easy for her. She faces inner doubts, realizing how important her help is in this situation. Esteban is furious that he was unable to see Mabel's first manifestation of her powers, and his frustration is further exacerbated by his belief that her interference is the cause of his disappointment. The courtiers discuss the problem of the broken barrier protecting the kingdom. The security issue becomes increasingly tense, and they admit that they missed important details, allowing enemies to enter. It turns out that Mabel has a unique position. She is second in line to the throne and the only heir to the Margrave of Gardenia. Her status makes her a prime target for the family's political enemies. Political intrigue is revealed when it becomes clear that the enemy has used trickery to kidnap Mabel by breaching the barrier. The plot was clearly long planned and carefully executed. Esteban realizes that Mabel's kidnapping was planned from the start. He feels a deep sense of guilt for what happened and promises to punish those responsible despite the difficulties of the situation. The advisors try to persuade Esteban not to take too harsh measures in order to avoid diplomatic conflicts. However, he decides to act decisively since it concerns Mabel's safety. Esteban is willing to take any measures to protect Mabel. His determination to take revenge on his enemies and eliminate the threat becomes clear, despite the warnings of those around him. Emperor Esteban discusses diplomatic relations, noting that Mabel, despite her stoicism, cried over the incident, which leaves him with mixed feelings, showing his concern. Esteban is surprised by the rumors about his passion for the princess, giving her gifts and riches. He admits that her favor is important because it changed his attitude towards his surroundings. Gerald expresses his concerns about the Montego affair. Esteban decides to leave the matter aside for now and trust in Gerald's insight, hinting at his loyalty and wisdom. Esteban decides to appoint Mabel a personal guard who can stand by her side and protect her. He announces this openly, hoping to find a volunteer among his subjects. Esteban reflects on the weight of responsibility, comparing it to a cup of honey filled with difficulties. He realizes that any wrong decision can lead to dire consequences. None of those present dare to become Mabel's guard, but suddenly a mysterious person appears, confidently offering his help, causing surprise to those around him. The new guard declares that she is ready to protect the princess. Her determination and professionalism immediately inspire confidence in Esteban, who agrees to her candidacy. Mabel enjoys a moment of peace in her crib, reflecting on the harshness of the world around her. She treasures these rare moments when she can just be a child. The courtiers discuss the news of the Montego affair and note how the princess participates in the negotiations, which causes those around her to admire her wisdom despite her young age. Mabel dreams of having a real family she can rely on. She envies the brother-sister type of relationship and hopes to one day find the same support. The fox, with a wide smile and genuine warmth, addresses the little Princess Mabel. Her sleepy surprise and awkward reaction create a moment that is both comical and touching, but the suddenness of her awakening causes a little chaos. Mabel looks and Fox is immediately there. The girl looks at him warily, wondering who he is and why he is acting so friendly. Fox is delighted by her confusion, calling her cute in her moments of fear. Fox, with an ironic smile, reminds Mabel of his first impression, hinting at her coldness. She asks irritably who he is talking to here so warmly. A woman in an elegant outfit enters the room, interrupting them. The fox recognizes the newcomer as Madame Ruth, and they begin to exchange pleasantries. Her appearance adds to the tension as her name is linked to the family of the former Empress. Memories come alive, filling the atmosphere with formal respect. Madame Ruth flatteringly remarks that Fox has become even more attractive. Fox responds gallantly, hinting at their future meetings. Meanwhile, Mabel watches from her bed, indignant that such a man is assigned to guard her. Mabel can't believe that a member of the Empress's family is her bodyguard. The fox, despite possible prejudices, shows friendliness from the very beginning, but the girl still doesn't trust him. Mabel wonders why Fox is trying so hard to impress her when he clearly doesn't like her. Her tender emotions turn to irritation, but those around her continue to think of her as a sweet angel, although inside she is seething. Nanny Mabel, worried about the princess after the night's attack, tries to comfort her, but Mabel, encouraged by Nanny's kindness, begins to calm down. Fox watches their interaction, noting the woman's sincerity. The fox, still watching the scene, decides that Mabel is pretending to be nice to fool those around her. However, he is pleased to see how the nanny's genuine smile warms the girl, creating a rare moment of calm. The fox humorously says that Mabel is not just a person, but an angel who came down from heaven. His emotional reaction causes laughter and surprise in everyone, emphasizing how captivated he is by her charm despite her coldness. Mabel is outraged by the appointment of a stupid, in her opinion, knight as her guard, considering this a mockery on the part of the emperor. She loses patience, seeing in this yet another proof of dislike for herself. The girl begins to think about her future. She is overcome with anxiety. She asks herself whether she will be able to cope with the situation and be safe. Oscar usually appears serious, which is explained by the expectations placed on him as the heir. Society sees him as a hope, which affects his behavior. However, when they meet in person, Oscar behaves like a normal child. His childish antics cause Mabel slight bewilderment. She did not expect such simplicity in his behavior. Oscar suddenly appears in the room, causing everyone to turn their attention to him. His behavior seems inappropriate for the situation, but he remains calm. The fox reproaches Oscar for his frivolous behavior. He points out the importance of keeping boundaries for an heir who must be an example to others. Oscar, despite his gentle nature, faces harsh criticism. Liz believes that the boy needs to practice more and show better results. Mabel notices how Fox's voice is getting harsher, which worries her. She wants to support Oscar but doesn't know how yet. Oscar walks away, listening thoughtfully to the adult's words. Mabel decides that she needs to find a way to help him as she senses his vulnerability. Watching Oscar, Mabel realizes that behind his confidence lies a child who needs support. She promises herself to do everything she can to help him. Little Mabel starts crying, which surprises everyone around her because she has never done this before. Oscar tries to calm her down but suddenly loses his balance, causing concern among the others. Oscar picks Mabel up, and his calm presence helps the girl stop crying. She trustingly cuddles up to him, which touches those around her and emphasizes her affection for the prince. Mabel finds herself feeling more at ease around Oscar. She concludes that his presence calms her down. This makes her think about how to reduce her interactions so as not to attract unnecessary attention. To avoid unwanted situations, Mabel decides to redirect Oscar's attention. She acts decisively, forcing him to give her to another adult, although this seems unexpected to those around her. Mabel, in order to defuse the situation, makes a loud sound similar to meowing. This causes shock and confusion in everyone, including Oscar, who sees her such unusual behavior for the first time. Mabel's bodyguard Fox watches the proceedings. The others discuss her emotional attachment to the prince and explain that her mood is directly affected by his presence, which makes one wonder about the situation. The fox expresses his concern, wondering at Mabel's strange behavior. In his eyes, this situation seems absurd because Mabel has never shown such emotions before. Mabel begins to reflect on her behavior. She comes to the conclusion that her daily anticipation of meeting Oscar has become habitual. This makes her feel embarrassed, but she cannot deny her feelings. The fox walks down the long corridor, lost in his thoughts. He tries to comprehend the whole situation and find a way to deal with the princess's unexpected actions. Upon meeting his sister, Fox discusses his new assignment. He admits that he never wanted to be the princess's personal guard, but also notes that he likes children. His emotions remain mixed. Liz, the bodyguard, reflects on his mistress's strict attitude, realizing that he must live up to her demands. In her presence, he feels the need to be disciplined and collected. The fox discusses his impression of the princess with the heroine, recalling how he was struck by her spontaneity and kindness. Admiration flared up instantly, and he describes her as the sweetest of all. In an attempt to ease the tension, the fox assures his mistress that he shares her strict principles regarding the princess. He promises to be as demanding as she is and to maintain discipline. In the past, a little boy named Oscar appeared in the imperial palace. He seemed lonely, but sometimes the fox came to him to brighten his loneliness. These moments left a mark on their lives. Despite her care, Oscar's sister was strict and believed that he needed to forget about childish games in order to focus on the future. This determined Oscar's path and his upbringing. Oscar, despite his young age, faced high demands. His sister handed over his training to Liz, insisting on a strict approach. Liz had a hard time accepting this style of upbringing. The fox, despite his doubts, follows the mistress's instructions. He understands that little Oscar is having a hard time, but he knows that this approach will strengthen his character. However, his soul is tormented by contradictions. The fox watches the mistress and understands her inner struggle. He understands that her strictness is caused by concern for Oscar's future, but worries that this will create a rift between them. The fox ponders how to improve the relationship between the princess and her sister to avoid future conflicts. He decides to show patience and wisdom to smooth out the rough edges. Time flies and nature changes. The fox understands that their efforts will bear fruit, but he does not yet know what the future will be. All that remains for him is to believe in the best and continue to work. Mabel reflects on how bored she is in her new world, remembering her past life. She easily learns all the skills she could do, and boredom takes over her completely. Realizing that her childhood habits are beginning to disappear, she begins to strictly monitor her behavior to avoid making mistakes. Even baby food is a way for her to feel like she is becoming human again. She dreams of trying regular food, soon imagining all the delicacies that must be available to members of the imperial family. Remembering her past life, she regrets the pleasures she missed. Lost in memories of the old days, Mabel tries to distract herself from becoming despondent. She notices that something unusual is happening today at the door of Fox, her guard. Mabel thinks about Fox, remembering his role as a teacher to Oscar. She knows how strict he can be, and his teaching methods make her uneasy, especially with children. The girl notes that Fox only relaxes in her presence. However, looking at his behavior, she begins to wonder if he will change when Oscar comes. In one of the situations, Mabel suddenly meows loudly, which causes laughter and surprise among those around her. They discuss her unusual behavior, associating it with her feelings. Mabel is bored and says she wants the night to end so she can do something interesting. The people around her suggest she take a walk to cheer her up. During the discussion of the walk, a kitten is mentioned that is believed to be Mabel's favorite. Her fascination with meowing makes people think that she actually loves cats. Although she likes cats, Mabel admits to herself that her interest in them is exaggerated. She is confident that one day she will be able to explain everything to others when she begins to speak fluently. Mabel, a little girl with pink hair, looks at the adults with curiosity. They notice her interest and kindly offer to look at the kitten. The girl's eyes shine, but in her soul there remains a doubt, as if no one understands her feelings. Mabel notices how hot it has become and reflects on how much has changed since she was in the castle. A gentle breeze touches her face, and she is momentarily lost in her thoughts, trying to get used to the newness. Summer brings pleasant warmth, and Mabel finds herself out for a walk. Her caring nanny covers her with an umbrella so that the sun does not cause discomfort. The girl understands that she was taken out to feel the charm of this time of year. Nature amazes Mabel. Her attention is drawn to the bright scent of flowers that fills the air. The girl seems to rediscover the world, absorbing every detail. Her eyes are wide open in wonder. Mabel picks up one of the flowers given to her by her nanny. It is soft and delicate. She is struck by its beauty and notices that she has never received a bouquet before. Flowers become a symbol of something distant and dear to her. Thinking back, Mabel feels sad. She feels lonely because even in important moments of her life like graduation, no one came to support her. Her thoughts take her back to those days, causing a slight bitterness. Mabel tries to distract herself, but she can't stop thinking about the past. She holds the flower, but her thoughts are still somewhere far away. Her face expresses sadness, but she fights the feeling. The servant suggests that Mabel go into the forest to look at the kitten. She agrees, and together they head into the thicket. The girl carefully looks at her surroundings, expecting something unusual. On the way, Mabel overhears the guards talking about her. Her interest is drawn to the rustling sounds. She begins to search for the kitten, feeling excited and curious despite her fatigue. Finally, in the bushes, Mabel notices a small kitten making a soft meow. She looks at it with delight, forgetting all her worries. Her heart is filled with joy from this small but important meeting. A glittering golden cat appears in a clearing in the forest, surprising Mabel and Xavier. The girl looks at him with delight, and Xavier notices that this time the cat came to them himself, as if expecting a meeting. Mabel is surprised to see the fluffy, golden-furred animal again. Xavier notices that the cat has grown noticeably. The cat responds with a loud meow, as if to confirm this. Mabel reacts with delight as the cat rubs against her hand. She remembers that this mythical beast may have appeared on her birthday, wondering if it is connected to her destiny. The girl thinks about the connection between the cat and the holy prophecy, but does not yet understand the essence. Because of the heat, she feels sick, and Xavier decides to take her to the lake, asking her to say goodbye to the cat. Xavier picks up Mabel and offers to say bye to the cat. The girl is embarrassed but eventually repeats the words, which makes Xavier genuinely happy. He smiles, admiring her efforts. Mabel is embarrassed by the praise, considering it unnecessary. The golden cat, as if understanding her thoughts, briefly looks in her direction and leaves. The girl quietly wishes for him to come back again. Mabel suddenly hears a strange voice and wonders if she is hallucinating from the heat. Xavier notices nothing but her weakness and decides to quicken his pace to help her faster. On the way to the lake, Xavier encourages Mabel, urging her on, and even has fun running. Lisandro the guard follows them, keeping up, creating a fun but chaotic situation. Eventually, Xavier decides to rest. He lies down on the grass, laying Mabel down next to him to let her recover. Their escorts discuss returning to the castle. While everyone else's attention is occupied, Mabel takes the opportunity to run around and enjoy her freedom. She enjoys the space, knowing that such moments are rare. Mabel, playing in the meadow, notices Xavier lying on the grass in complete peace. He is clearly resting, but the girl reproaches him for his lack of attention to her highness, causing a smile and slight embarrassment among those around him. Xavier replies that he is keeping an eye on her but continues to lazily rest. Mabel, with a slight sneer, suggests that he is tired and remarks that he should exercise more before leaving him alone. Noticing something strange in the bushes, Mabel comes closer. Her attention is drawn to a glowing object. She is surprised and decides to check what it is, coming closer and closer to the mysterious source. Suddenly, her gaze falls on a man lying in the grass. It is a boy with black hair. Mabel recognizes him. This is the same mysterious Devlin Devil whom she has already met earlier. She remembers that the boy was captured by knights during their first meeting. This shocks her because she thought he was still in the dungeon, and now she sees him bleeding. The boy's condition frightens her. Mabel realizes that he has been seriously injured and wonders who could have treated him so cruelly. It seems completely unacceptable to her and makes her feel sorry for him. The girl notes that the boy is about the same age as her friend Oscar. She decides to help, but her weak body does not allow her to take significant action, although she tries to somehow crawl to him. Realizing her limitations, she ponders how to wipe away the blood, but her strength is not enough to even call for help. Her abilities are limited to slow movement. At this time, Xavier wakes up and notices that Mabel has crawled quite far away from him. Surprised, he gets up to check what happened because her behavior seems strange to him. Mabel panics, wondering what to do in this situation. She is tormented by thoughts of helping the boy, but at that moment she hears the sound of footsteps and realizes that she has been found. Mabel carefully hides something in the grass, deciding to hide it until someone arrives. At that moment, Xavier, looking around cheerfully, calls out to her, teasing and calling her princess as if he wants to catch her off guard. The girl hurries to finish her actions before anyone notices her. Finally, a flash occurs in the grass. A wounded guy with black hair appears in front of her with green leaves lying on him. Opening his eyes, the mysterious young man reveals himself to be Devlin's devil. Mabel is struck by his red eyes and mysterious aura. His gaze, full of mystery, seems to draw her in, leaving her hesitant. Mabel finds herself overcome by a strange sensation from the stranger's red eyes. She fights the urge to get closer and decides to run. Panicked, she calls out for Xavier, but inside she feels uneasy. Xavier arrives in time and is relieved to see Mabel. He laughs at her worried face and asks her solicitously how she got into this situation, what scared her. Reassured, Mabel admits to Xavier that she did everything she could to help her attention, still returning to the mysterious boy she left in the clearing surrounded by greenery. Devlin's devil, in a daze, recalls his existence immersed in darkness. He sees fragments of memories where he loses control of himself and becomes a weapon of destruction without feelings or choice. His past is filled with dark scenes of him shrouded in darkness, killing indiscriminately like an instrument. All this causes him pain and self-loathing, plunging him into endless despair. In rare moments of his existence, he comes to his senses. One day, his magical abilities were trapped in a sphere that held his power, turning him into a prisoner. Suddenly, the magical barrier is breached, and Devlin's devil escapes. The guards discover his absence, and Mabel is left wondering how fateful her encounter with this mysterious creature will be. Against the backdrop of the forest, the command to capture the fugitive is heard, and the tension increases. The boy with black hair, clearly wounded, realizes that he is near the palace of Hermano. He is pursued and is forced to run further, overcoming pain. The wounded boy tries to run away despite his weakness. His mind suddenly clears, and at that moment he meets the gaze of someone unexpected. This piercing feeling makes him freeze. His gaze meets the blue-eyed child, and it surprises him. The encounter disorientates him, causing him to lose consciousness again. He feels himself on the edge of his strength. Having barely come to his senses, the boy wonders what this strange feeling of clarity was. He realizes that he has lost a lot of blood and decides to rest a little, falling to the ground in the middle of the forest. Lying in the grass, he hopes that a little rest will help him regain his strength. Nearby, a blue-eyed girl with pink hair appears. He senses her presence but believes that she is not a threat. The girl comes closer, not afraid of his wounded state. He thinks that she will soon leave on her own and tries to relax again. Her actions cause him slight surprise. He smells the herbs the girl collects and brings to him. This awakens his consciousness again, and he begins to understand that something unusual is happening around him, as if the limitation of his power has been lifted. A girl's light footsteps are heard nearby, and she tries to talk to him. She notices that he seems lost. Her simplicity surprises him, and he silently watches her actions. The boy notices another person approaching. He tries to understand who this person is and how he is connected to the girl. At this time, the night air seems hotter to him than during the day. The gaze shifts to the majestic palace that rises in the darkness of the night. The guy reflects on the strange coincidences and feelings that overtook him that day, realizing that the night brought changes. Mabel, feeling very unwell, lies in bed, her body engulfed in heat. Her maid is alarmed by the girl's condition and hurries to call a doctor, realizing that her mistress's health is in danger. Recalling how they were caught in the pouring rain, the maid laments that it was all due to the unexpected bad weather. On the way back, Mabel got wet despite the staff's attempts to protect her. Back home, Mabel was thoroughly washed and changed, but the fever persisted. She thought she was experiencing her first summer cold, one so severe she had never felt before. Esteban, having learned of Mabel's illness, came to her chambers. He is concerned about her condition, notices how difficult it is for her to bear even a simple cold, and worries about her health. The emperor regrets that he cannot share her suffering, understanding how hard it is for her now. He tries to calm himself, trusting the doctors who gave her an antipyretic. Esteban confirms Mabel's need for rest, believing that the medicine will help with the fever. He looks at her with concern, convinced that rest will speed up her recovery. Xavier suddenly bursts into the chamber, loudly announcing urgent news. His casualness causes confusion and slight anger in the emperor, but he listens patiently. Unable to bear the gravity of the situation, Xavier panics and tries to justify his appearance, which further irritates Esteban, who remains coolly calm. Esteban asks Xavier to continue, but his cold-bloodedness only further dismays the young man. He runs away, leaving everyone bewildered, and the emperor returns to Mabel. As if he had forgotten about the incident, Esteban once again focused on the girl. His anxiety slowly fades because he is sure that everything will be fine with her health thanks to the efforts of those around her. Esteban learned that the unknown enemy easily overcame the magical barriers and attacked the guards, after which it disappeared. The only clues were traces of blood leading to the northern forest, but there they disappeared. He remembered Mabel walking by the lake near the forest. The thought of the girl possibly meeting the intruder made him feel relieved that it had not happened. Esteban ordered the castle's security to be increased tenfold, but was informed that security measures had already been increased 20-fold. Despite this, he insisted on continuing the search in the forest. After inspecting the castle, he gave orders that no one should be allowed in or out without special permission. His attention was focused on ensuring that Mabel was completely safe. Esteban stood for a long time by Mabel's crib, watching her sleep peacefully. She looked so fragile and small, and he quietly asked her not to get sick, worrying about her future. Esteban was torn between his own personalities. Despite his power and wealth, he felt powerless, unable to protect the person dearest to him at a critical moment. In the face of the past, he turned to Shiana, remembering how she had sacrificed herself for the child. He understood her sacrifice and the pain she had hidden in choosing their daughter. He suddenly realized that he could have saved both Mabel and Shiana, But his decision to take her for their safety had been too cruel for her. The feeling haunted him. Esteban stayed in the room with Shiana, silently asking for forgiveness. The internal torment and regrets of the past did not give him peace, and he was looking for a way to atone for his guilt. But her words reminded him that forgiveness wasn't what he was looking for. He didn't want an apology, he wanted to go back to the times when he could protect her and Mabel, but that was no longer possible. Esteban reflects on how hard it was to accept the departure of a loved one whose words of forgiveness were never his last. He feels a deep wound in his heart that has become a scar. Looking at little Mabel, Esteban decides that he will protect this child from all harm so that nothing threatens her. However, in his soul there is a smoldering fear. Will he be able to cope with this task? Esteban admits to himself that his fear is enormous, and he was afraid to even accept this responsibility. This feeling led him to think about abandoning his mission. He stands next to Mabel's crib, wondering what it is that frightens him so. He looks at her and asks for forgiveness, realizing that he is now her father. Esteban finally convinces himself that he can handle it and protect Mabel because he is her dad. These thoughts fill him with determination and confidence. Mabel, suffering from the heat, feels dizzy and realizes that there is no one left in her life who can help her. She understands that she must cope on her own. Finding expired medications, the girl is disappointed to realize that she doesn't even have the money to buy new ones. Bitter memories of losing her father come to her mind. Her thoughts return to her mother, who she says will never return. This fact makes her even more lonely and causes her pain and sadness. Mabel is tormented by questions about why her parents did not love her and why she is always alone. Her pain is intensified by the knowledge that in the eyes of others she looks pathetic. Lying on the floor, she wonders if it would make her feel better to know the reason for her loneliness. But alone with herself, she realizes that no one will answer this question. At night, Mabel heard an unfamiliar male voice. It seemed calming to her. After asking if her father had returned, she felt a coolness on her forehead, which surprised her because she did not have a father. She felt warm and caring as she was given a spoonful of medicine. A man's voice comforted her, telling her to get well and that they could go for a walk together, leaving her in tender dreams. Her mind was in a tangled mess. She had a dream where a stranger said he was her father. Mabel couldn't believe it because she never had a father. However, he assured her that he could protect her. Her heart was filled with longing and a desire for a family. Even though she thought it was a dream, she felt a warmth and safety that seemed so real that she didn't want to wake up. Mabel wanted to believe in the dream because here she was, accepted and forgiven no matter what she was. Even knowing it was an illusion, she enjoyed the peace, afraid that waking up would destroy this fairy tale. She saw herself in a cozy bed and a man with white hair sat next to her. Her consciousness begged her not to end this dream because she was calm here and the world seemed bright and kind. Waking up brought the realization that a damp towel had touched her face. Remembering her condition, Mabel realized that she had caught a cold and mentally thanked for the care, not understanding where it came from. She felt relief, realizing that she was better now. Vaguely remembering the events of the night, she was lost in thoughts about who could be nearby. She was warmed by the thought of support. Mabel decided to brush off the memory of the man as just a dream. She got out of bed telling herself that there was nothing to be afraid of and that she just needed to move on with her life. Esteban suddenly appeared in the room. Mabel was surprised to recognize the Emperor, and her mind was filled with questions about why he was here and what this meant for her life. Esteban watches Mabel anxiously as she sleeps with a slight blush on her cheeks. He carefully checks to see if her temperature has dropped and wonders why he is the one caring for the girl instead of the nanny. Mabel wakes up to find the Emperor looking tired and pale as if he had not slept all night. She begins to wonder if it was a dream where he was taking care of her or if it was all real. Remembering Esteban's caring touch, Mabel realizes that the one who stayed by her side all night was the Emperor. This leaves her with mixed feelings and an unexpected excitement. Esteban leans over Mabel quietly, asking how she is feeling. The girl feels the warmth of his soft hand and his soothing voice, realizing how sincere and gentle he is with her. Mabel ponders why the Emperor cares so much about her. She begins to question her own worth and wonders if she deserves his love and care. Looking at Esteban, holding her in his arms, Mabel remembers her past life. and the pain she went through making her wonder if her heart has changed because of those events. The pleasant scent of summer flowers is carried into the room by the breeze. Mabel enjoys the moment, but her peace is disturbed by the servant's request to close all the windows, which annoys her. Despite her cold, Mabel doesn't want to be deprived of fresh air, convincing herself that nothing terrible will happen. She is sad that she can't afford herself either a walk or freedom of choice. Esteban decides to remove all dangerous objects from Mabel's room, including her favorite doll. His overprotectiveness becomes annoying to her, but he is sure that this is to protect the girl. The servants continue to look after Mabel's safety, but she finds that their care has made her feel calmer. At that moment, Oscar appears, filling the room with new energy. Oscar enters the room with a smile, enjoying the coolness after the heat. He is warmly greeted by the nanny, who offers him refreshing tea. Having politely thanked her, he heads to the sofa where Mabel is already waiting, looking at him impatiently. Mabel sits with Oscar and asks what interesting things they can do today. At this time, she notices the appearance of another guest, Lissandro Donovan, whom the girl does not like much but tolerates for the sake of the prince. Mabel suddenly starts acting strangely and jumping up and down with a cheerful meow, imitating a cat. Lissandro, who comes in, watches this with a smile, calling her a little princess, which amuses Oscar even more. Oscar takes little Mabel in his arms and tries to explain that Lissandro is not so bad. The girl, offended by his words, only hugs her friend tighter, showing that she is ready to protect him from all enemies. Oscar remembers how Lissandro used to be kind and playful with him, but became strict after becoming his mentor. Despite this, he understands that Donovan only wants the best for him, trying to raise a worthy heir. Mabel decides that it is her duty to protect Oscar from Lissandro's influence, remembering how he has changed. Suddenly, she is distracted by the books brought to Oscar. Mabel looks at the stack with confusion and curiosity. The girl is surprised by the huge number of books that Oscar has to read. She shares her opinion that so many tasks for one person is terrible. However, Oscar replies that he is interested in learning something new. Oscar opens one of the books and tries to read it. However, the text is difficult and incomprehensible. He reflects on how unfair it is that he has the ability to understand the world, but not the ability to read. Mabel, having found maps of the continents in a book, is fascinated by them. She happily shares the find with Oscar, making him forget about the difficulties for a moment and just enjoy the moment. Mabel notices that Oscar had no interest in books before, but maps have piqued his interest. Together, they dive into the study of the continents, creating an atmosphere of warmth, joy, and carefree childhood. Oscar tells Mabel about the great Hermano Empire where they live. He mentions its history, its rise to power through conquest, and speaks of the neighboring Holy Kingdom of Abelardo, but quickly changes the subject, clearly hiding something. They look at the map, noting the neighboring countries, the kingdoms of Percy and Bargatha. Oscar amazes Mabel with his knowledge at 6 years old, and she feels slightly embarrassed by her inexperience. Mabel is amazed that such a young child understands the geography of the world so well. She begins to admire Oscar, realizing his extraordinary mental abilities. While looking at the map, Mabel notices the second largest country. She asks about it, and Oscar names it the Devlin Empire, causing the girl to feel unexpected tension. The mention of Devlin brings to mind an image of a demon associated with the place. She remembers how the demon managed to escape and wonders if it has been recaptured. Oscar explains that the relationship between Hermano and Devlin is extremely tense. Devlin is always looking to attack, which is why the atmosphere becomes so tense whenever he is mentioned. He adds that even Montego of the Holy Kingdom views Devlin with suspicion. Despite the buffer of Abelardo, Hermano's northern border remains dangerous and conflict-prone. Oscar recalls a recent skirmish on the border in which Hermano's troops were wiped out. He heard rumors that it was the work of a single man. Mabel is shocked by this information, not believing that one man could destroy an entire army. Her attention returns to the map, where Oscar confidently points out the location of the battle. Oscar laughs at her surprise, but admits that he is telling her all this just to keep her busy. Mabel claims that she understands more than she thinks and is waiting for more stories. Esteban asks Mabel to repeat a simple exercise after him to develop her motor skills. He shows her how to stretch her arms and hold them in the right position, but the girl feels limited, aware of her youth. Mabel decides to play with Oscar, enjoying her childhood. She feels joy from playing and communicating with the first prince, who pleases with his enthusiasm and support, helping her overcome her fears. The summer day brings a pleasant coolness. Mabel is 8 months old. Despite this, her parents are worried about her immobility. The doctor assures that there are no other health problems. The parents discuss concerns about Mabel's condition, noting her developmental delays. However, the doctor believes that the situation may be temporary and advises against panicking. With growing awareness, Mabel begins to roll over on her own, albeit belatedly. She struggles but finds the strength to continue. Her parents begin to see hope. The latest medical results confirm that Mabel is healthy. Her mother is happy, but she can't shake off the feeling of worry, believing that she is paying too much attention to her immobility. Mabel wonders whether to show her learning to roll over. She is afraid of comparing herself to other children and making mistakes in her actions, fearing that she will repeat the mistakes of the past. When night falls, Mabel is left alone and begins to train hard, trying to move with all her strength. She considers her work a secret mission and puts in maximum effort. She understands that her work must remain secret, so she tries to act quietly so that no one can hear her efforts, especially Esteban, who may be behind the door. Despite her fatigue, Mabel remembers that even in difficult situations, such as being the future ruler, one must remain persistent. Esteban, holding her, makes it clear that he believes in her strength and future. Mabel, with incredible effort, learns to cling to the railings of her crib. She feels proud of her first success, but soon realizes that the hardest part is ahead. She needs to stand up. The girl motivates herself by remembering the joys of her past life, where she knew how to walk. She tries to get up, clutching the railing, but her movements are still uncertain, and her attempts are accompanied by childish babble. Mabel tries her best to get up. Inspired, she makes one last push, and here she is on her feet. Illuminated with happiness, she exclaims that she will be able to walk on her own. However, the joy is replaced by awareness. Only after standing up, she understands that she won't be able to run right away. Mabel looks at the world with new delight, as if she is taking the first step in her life. Meanwhile, Esteban, quietly entering the room, notices her. He came to look at her sleeping face but finds the girl awake, which surprises him. Noticing Esteban, Mabel accidentally falls over, letting out a startled cry. For a moment, she finds herself in his arms, overwhelmed by the unexpected attention. The girl ends up on the floor making soft baby sounds. Esteban, standing by the door, watches her awkward attempts to explain herself, not immediately understanding what has happened. Mabel begins to think about how to explain her actions. She is afraid that her too rapid development may seem strange and ridiculous and looks for an excuse. Suddenly, it dawns on her that she can't speak yet. A plan to surprise Esteban by keeping everything a secret flies through her mind, but she's too nervous to continue babbling. Esteban, looking at her, says that he is proud of her. In his eyes, she is a true genius. Mabel feels her heart fill with warmth because her efforts have been noticed. Mabel, a girl with pink hair, looks surprised when her father, Emperor Esteban, decides to celebrate her first step. The atmosphere is filled with emotional excitement because for him this moment is a significant event. The emperor looks at his daughter with pride and is eager to share his joy. However, his impulse to action shocks Mabel. She does not understand what awaits her. He lifts her up as if preparing for something important. Mabel is overcome with excitement but also fear. Esteban wants to give her something special to mark the occasion. His solemn determination fills the scene with anticipation. The emperor ponders what gift to give his daughter. Despite his majestic manners, he shows concern, trying to choose something unique and meaningful for her. Esteban offers the gift of the Duchy of Bastante. The offer is so grandiose that Mabel is stunned, trying to comprehend it, wondering what it means. At this time, affairs of state are being discussed in the throne room. Esteban, maintaining his characteristic severity, makes decisions that testify to his strength as a ruler. The advisors note that the emperor's mood has changed. They notice his friendliness and ease of behavior, which differs from his usual serious appearance. Esteban remembers witnessing his daughter's first steps. It was a happy moment for him, which awakened in him joy and pride in her development. As he sits on his throne, he thinks fondly of how lucky he is to have such a lovely daughter. He sees her early achievements as a source of joy that brightens his days. Mabel continues to master new skills, and her successes bring happiness not only to the emperor, but also to the entire palace retinue. Her presence makes the atmosphere in the castle lively and harmonious. Emperor Esteban is proud of his daughter, who despite being only 8 months old is already walking. He admires her genius, anticipating how she will soon start calling him Daddy. In honor of this momentous occasion, Esteban decides to give his daughter a gift, to give her the entire Principality of Bistante. This decision causes surprise and confusion among the courtiers. The Marquis expresses doubts. The Principality of Bistante is a strategically important territory, and it is more logical to pass it on to the heir, not to the 8-month-old princess. His opinion is supported by political arguments. The emperor's reaction astonishes everyone. When they shout that this is a joke, he calmly replies that his decision is quite serious. The atmosphere in the hall becomes tense. Considering that Bistante is the personal property of the emperor, no one can challenge his decision. Everyone accepts the fact that the principality will go to the princess despite her age. The courtiers discuss how the large-scale gift will affect the princess's future birthday celebration, predicting something grand and unprecedented. The intrigue is further heightened by the fact that many have not yet seen the princess in person. Her upcoming debut is causing a thrill of anticipation and a desire to witness her first official appearance. The emperor ends the meeting thinking it is time to visit his daughter. He imagines how much she has missed him and looks forward to meeting her. He is suddenly distracted by the appearance of the Marquise, who with a grin tries to attract Esteban's attention, hinting at something significant that requires immediate discussion. Esteban thinks with a little weariness about how long it has been quiet. He remembers how the Marquise has been bothering him since his daughter was born, and now he brings his worries again. The Marquis says with concern that Mabel is already 8 months old and he wants to see her. However, Esteban reminds him that she is still too young. The Marquis insists, claiming that she has already started walking, showing his concern. Esteban recalls His Majesty's words, which indicate the importance of the situation. He muses that Mabel may become the heir of the Marquis of Gardenia, but adds that this has not yet been decided. Esteban grimly reflects as the Marquis and others search for a way to take Mabel. He is determined not to give the girl up, calling her his daughter, but realizing the need, he agrees to one meeting to stop further arguments. Esteban remembers the Marquis's past anger when he told him about his wedding with Xiana. As he reflects on this, he notices that the situation itself irritates him. His memories of past frustrations and tensions come to mind. Mabel's scream echoes through the palace, drawing attention. The staff notices that the girl has stood up, marveling at her progress. They admire her attempts to walk, touched by her persistence and funny steps. Mabel, having overheard, thinks that the emperor must have told everyone about her progress. However, she decides that she can practice walking freely. She tries to move despite her still weak balance. The woman orders her servants to look after Mabel while she is away. Mabel tries to stand up again, and the servants enthusiastically help her, happy to be a part of her first steps. Mabel is already starting to get tired, but she sees how the servants enjoy her activity. She decides to continue the game to please them. They all have fun together, while the girl persistently tries new steps. Nanny reprimands the servants for their appearance, and Mabel notices their confusion. Her gaze is full of curiosity and slight anxiety, but she focuses on her efforts to move forward, overcoming difficulties with a smile. Mabel sees an unfamiliar couple, a stern man with a cane and an elegant woman. The girl wonders who these people are standing behind the nanny. Her gaze is drawn to the stern man, who exudes mystery. The man stares at Mabel and her heart sinks. She doesn't understand why his gaze evokes such strong emotions in her. The girl feels something familiar, like after a recent meeting with another important person. A nurse enters the room and comforts the child. She greets the guest, addressing him as the Marquis of Gardenia. The mention of the title makes Mabel wonder about the meaning of the name and its connection to her family. Mabel turns to get a better look at the Marquis. Her gaze falls on his posture and stern features. She guesses that if his name is Gardenia, he might be part of her family. The Marquis steps forward and introduces himself with his hand on his chest. He says that this is the first time he has met Her Majesty Princess Mabel and explains that he is her grandfather. Mabel is shocked by the revelation. Realizing what she heard, the girl is surprised. Grandfather? Her thoughts are confused. She tries to comprehend what happened. The realization that her grandfather is in front of her causes warm feelings in her heart. The man, touched by the girl's words, admires her growth. He notes that Mabel is already walking and understands many things. The girl is embarrassed but feels how her grandfather's words fill her with confidence. Mabel's grandfather's reaction suddenly reminds her of another person, causing her to feel a sense of déjà vu. She cannot understand why this encounter feels both new and familiar. At this time, Esteban the Emperor sits at his desk. His gaze is fixed on the door and his thoughts are focused on Mabel. His secretary is surprised by the ruler's absent-mindedness. Esteban guesses that the reason for his excitement is that the princess met her maternal grandfather for the first time. He acknowledges the significance of this meeting and its impact on their family. Emperor Esteban thinks about the people who want to take his daughter Mabel. He remembers the two villains with anger and tries to figure out how to protect her. He worries about their motives and possible plans. Esteban returns tiredly to his office, where his assistant Gustavo asks why the emperor, so worried, does not visit his daughter. However, Esteban refuses, afraid of looking stupid. Gustav tries to reassure the emperor, saying that he cannot look worse. In response, Esteban thinks hard, trying to understand his fears. His thoughts are full of contradictions. Gustavo gently hints that Mabel might want to see her father herself. Esteban doesn't believe it at first, but hope creeps into his heart. Gustavo successfully reassures him with a joke, causing a slight smile. Emotionally worried about his daughter, Esteban thinks about her feelings. Gustavo assures that Mabel loves him very much, but Esteban himself remains in doubt, wondering what is going on in her head. Esteban is suddenly overcome with gratitude and sincerely praises Gustavo. Gustavo is surprised by such a positive reaction, but accepts it, smiling shyly in response. Esteban decides to trust Gustavo with everything in order to meet Mabel. However, he suddenly feels that he has been tricked. The realization causes mixed emotions. Esteban, remembering his love and care for Mabel, realizes that life is full of difficulties. He would like to see her around as long as possible, but he feels responsible for her happiness. Deeply distressed, the emperor realizes that his opinions have not always been taken into account. However, he decides that it is his duty to support Mabel despite his inner fears. He looks at her sweet face and realizes that for her sake, he is ready to cope with any trials. The warmth in his heart gives him strength, and he firmly decides to stay close as long as he can. Mabel meets Emperor Esteban. She notices his tears, which have only recently dried, and understands how much he has been worried. Esteban is surprised by her words of comfort, and those around her support the girl. The story goes back in time to the story of Mabel's mother, Shiana, the most beautiful woman in the empire. The emperor was enchanted by her and made an offer that changed their destinies. The emperor is remembered as a cold and cruel heir who valued human life no more than coin. His reputation as the worst monarch has haunted him to this day. Despite his past, Esteban changed for the love of Shiana. His feelings were so sincere that even the girl's father, who was initially against it, resigned himself. After Shiana's death, Esteban takes charge of Mabel, his only remaining family, separating her from her grandfather to protect her, which many see as cruel. Mabel reflects on how she has a hard time seeing Esteban as family, but she understands his loneliness. She tries to understand his actions and motives. Esteban tries to mend fences with Mabel. Despite his stern features, he sees in the girl a memory of Xian and strives to be closer. Mistrust develops between Mabel's grandfather and Esteban. The grandfather notices the emperor's desire to care for the girl and, although reluctantly, acknowledges his efforts. Esteban's sudden appearance causes Mabel to be afraid, but she decides to remain brave. Esteban suggests that she return to her grandfather, showing his concern. Mabel begins to understand that behind Esteban's stern facade lies a man full of love and regret. She feels like an important part of his world, accepting her role in his life. A little girl with pink hair, Mabel wonders why the Marquis is going to hand her over to the Emperor, and she is anxious about the moment. Emperor Esteban responds by making a grand entrance, plunging everyone into an atmosphere of tension. The Emperor, speaking imperiously to the Marquis, orders him to rise. An electric tension arises between the men. Mabel feels as if the atmosphere is heating up to the limit and does not understand what is happening. The tension escalates into a silent conflict, and Mabel realizes that this is a clash between father-in-law and son-in-law. Her anxiety increases, and she internally protests not wanting to be drawn into this dispute. Mabel decides to flee, but her desperate attempts to avoid the men's confrontation are unsuccessful. She hides at the Marquis, hoping to find protection there, but it does not help. The girl decides to look for a nanny as her only refuge. In her naive hope, she feels that only there can be safety. Her attempts to evacuate seem funny, but at the same time touching. Esteban appears at the moment of meeting the nanny. The nanny is shocked by his presence, looking up full of respect and surprise. Mabel watches in confusion, not understanding the essence of what is happening. Suddenly, everyone freezes, and Mabel notices that it is because of her. Her agility and speed amaze everyone around her. She proudly enjoys this moment, proving that she is capable of more. The father and the Emperor begin to argue about whose blood she is. Each believes that Mabel's athletic and intellectual qualities are his own. Their rivalry begins to seem pointless and comical. Mabel, watching the conflict, wonders why they are arguing and quietly decides to use this moment to escape. She quietly makes her way to her nanny, hoping for a cozy hideout. As they both reach out to the girl, Mabel becomes the center of attention. Escaping the argument, she decides to choose who to trust, proving that she can make decisions despite her young age. Mabel ponders the difficulties of her choices, realizing that every step she takes could lead to problems. Her despair breaks through tears, but even at such a moment, she understands that tears will not solve her difficulties. Oscar suddenly appears, calling her joyfully, telling her of an important door that is open for her. This moment awakens hope in Mabel's heart, and she feels that she can be supported. Oscar confidently walks forward, showing that he knows the way. Mabel, looking at him, decides to act because there is a better way to cope with difficulties than just mourning them. Oscar gives Mabel a warm hug, apologizing for the slight delay. He admits that he has been busy with his studies, but he will always make time for her. This fills her with gratitude. In the background, a serious charge is revealed against Montego, an assassination attempt on a member of the imperial family. His patients can no longer stand it, and he delivers a harsh verdict. Montego is banished from the Hermano Empire forever. He is sad to see that his life has changed dramatically, but is grateful to be alive, albeit under difficult circumstances. Emperor Esteban suddenly stops Montego with an important question about the divine seed. This moment makes Montego realize the gravity of his failure. Realizing that the mission has failed, Montego accepts his fate. His inner despair is visible, but he realizes that excuses will not help to improve the situation. Esteban speaks harshly, claiming that he never expected Montego to succeed in the first place. His words are merciless, making Montego feel helpless. Realizing that he has failed to live up to expectations, Montego reflects on how he got to this point. He can only accept the consequences of his actions and acknowledge his mistakes. The mysterious man wonders if the others understand his actions. He explains that he sent a servant to Hermano to test how effectively they were protecting God's seed, seeing it as preparation for something greater. A man discusses plans to return God's seed to Abelardo. He calls it a rehearsal and shares his thoughts. His interlocutor agrees, demonstrating an awareness of the importance of what is happening. The handsome blonde man acknowledges that the other's behavior may be unpleasant, but does not surprise. He confidently asserts that he has a clear plan, smiling an enigmatic smile. The man's plans are shrouded in mystery, but his faith in success is unshakable. The interlocutor listens attentively, admitting that he understood everything. The atmosphere is tense but remains calm. The blonde man turns out to be Saint King Michael Abelardo. Only members of his family can hold this title. He rarely shows himself in public, preferring to act through trusted people. His appearance is shrouded in legends. People imagine him as an old man, but in reality, he has an angelic appearance. His true age remains a secret, adding to his aura of mystery. A beautiful appearance does not always speak of the inner essence. The hero reflects on the fact that he does not want to know what this person is like inside, emphasizing the complexity and multi-layered nature of his. Little Mabel, a girl with pink hair, suddenly starts crying. She is worried about pain, and those around her are trying to figure out what is wrong. The atmosphere is filled with concern and anxiety. Despite her tears, the nanny laughs, explaining that the pain is due to Mabel's teething. The girl trusted her, but now feels betrayed, which adds to the drama of the situation. The other servants report that Mabel is crying. Nanny explains the reason, describing the situation with a slight smile. Despite the painful sensations, everyone understands that this is only a temporary phase. Mabel, a charming little girl with pink hair, lies in the arms of her nanny, who smiles and tells her that she will soon have teeth. The girl happily perceives this as a great event and begins to dream about her growing up. Her mind wanders to fantasies about how teething will allow her to begin to speak clearly. To her, this seems like an important milestone that will make her stronger and closer to adults. The nanny announces that they need to prepare for an important event, the arrival of Emperor Esteban. The girl is surprised that the news about her teeth reached him and does not believe that he will really come. Mabel is in pain from teething. Her nanny comforts her, saying it's a natural part of growing up. She perseveres, knowing it's proof of her growth. Nanny praises Mabel for her patience and fortitude, noting that even in moments of pain, she tries not to cry. Those present are amazed at her courage because the girl remains sweet even in difficult moments. Esteban suddenly appears with a loud cry, causing everyone around him to be surprised. His sudden appearance becomes a strong emphasis on the importance of the moment. The emperor smiles and declares that Mabel's teething is a national holiday. She realizes that Esteban is watching her life closely and noticing even such small things. Esteban ponders what gift to give Mabel for her achievement. The girl tenses, anticipating that the gift might be unexpected or strange. The emperor enthusiastically suggests sweets as the perfect gift for a child. He thinks it is especially appropriate to celebrate such a momentous occasion as the appearance of a tooth. Mabel is aware of how much attention and care she receives from those around her. Despite the difficult moments, her life is filled with warmth, and even small things like her teeth make her days bright. Esteban, full of enthusiasm, tells Mabel about his gift, a cook who will prepare sweets for her. However, the girl is upset because she expected the sweets themselves, not a person. A huge man appears in front of Mabel, who turns out to be the cook. She is indignant and cannot hide her disappointment, while those around her look at her in surprise. The news reaches the emperor. He is given a message from Abelardo. Esteban learns that the Holy King Michael wishes to attend the banquet in honor of Mabel's first birthday, which arouses suspicion. Esteban immediately orders a reply letter to be prepared. Tired of surprises, he realizes that this message may conceal a threat, but decides to act without delay. Esteban's inner thoughts reveal his tension. He realizes that Abelardo's actions may be a declaration of war, but this gives him an excuse to protect his daughter. Now Esteban has a new purpose, to protect Mabel as his daughter. He decides to respond harshly to show his position. Esteban finishes his letter and hands it to his servant. He is confident that his response will set the right tone for his future relationship with Abelardo. One of the servants is surprised by the straightforwardness of Esteban's answer. The emperor confirms that there is no need for unnecessary ceremony since he has 2 months before the banquet. Esteban understands that Michael's visit is an event of great importance. The identity of the Holy King is hidden, and this causes special tension in the empire. They begin to prepare. The atmosphere becomes festive as the entire palace prepares for Mabel's first birthday. Footsteps are heard outside the door, and Esteban looks forward to the day ahead. Mabel, a baby with pink hair and blue eyes, senses the tension around her. The sound of footsteps outside the door hints at the importance of the moment. The atmosphere is filled with anticipation because it is her first birthday. The nanny lifts Mabel into her arms with a smile, preparing for the upcoming event. The girl watches with interest as the adults sense excitement. Her presence lights up the room with joy. Mabel sees her reflection in the mirror for the first time. Her large blue eyes study themselves with curiosity. She is amazed and enchanted by her appearance, enjoying the moment of realizing her own uniqueness. She thinks about how she looks, lightly touches her hair and face. Embarrassment and pride overwhelm her. For little Mabel, this is a new and exciting experience, revealing the world around her. Realizing she is cute, Mabel begins to become aware of the reactions of others. She notices that her hair is different from others, causing her to become thoughtful about her appearance and place in the world. Smiling, Mabel shares her discovery with the nannies. Her big eyes are compared to the emperor's eyes, and she already has 4 teeth, which makes everyone present feel touched. The story goes that the mirror was kept out of her room for a long time for fear of breaking it. Now, having returned it, the adults are delighted by how Mabel reacts to her reflection. She is called to try on a special dress prepared for the party. The atmosphere becomes even more festive. Mabel looks at the dress with interest, believing that it is intended for her. For her, who grew up poor in her previous life, a fancy dress seems out of reach. She feels awe at the gift, trying to figure out how to handle it. She is dressed tenderly, completing the preparations for the holiday. Mabel feels like part of a fairy tale where everything around is for her. Her first birthday becomes a magical moment in her life. The young woman looks at Mabel tenderly and admires her pink hair, comparing it to the Empress's hair color. The girl realizes that she inherited her hair color from her mother, plunging into warm thoughts. Mabel ponders how she should react to the stories about her mother. She feels mixed emotions, as such moments bring both joy and confusion to her. The servants sincerely admire Mabel, calling her incredibly sweet. The atmosphere becomes lively, and the girl is happy with the attention and care of those around her, although she is a little embarrassed. One of the servants, wanting to embrace Mabel, is reproached for risking wrinkling her beautiful dress. Everyone laughs, and the tension is replaced by lightness and joy. Esteban appears, looking at Mabel with a kind and attentive gaze. The girl notices that he looks different, solemn, and a little unusual. Esteban picks up Mabel, wishing her a happy birthday. For the first time in her life, the girl hears such warm words, which brings her genuine joy and surprise. Mabel thinks back to her past when birthdays passed unnoticed. Her heart fills with new unfamiliar feelings from the attention she received. Esteban, with Mabel in his arms, heads to the opulent hall where the important event is about to begin. The grandeur of the setting heightens the sense of significance of the moment. When asked about another participant in the celebration, it turns out that he has already gone to the hall with the Duchess. The atmosphere becomes even more solemn, and the anticipation of the holiday grows. The young man, watching what is happening, experiences great excitement. His condition evokes sympathy from those around him, emphasizing how important this day is for everyone. Esteban stands thoughtfully next to Mabel, who considers him the worst boss ever. She notes his unpredictability and unusual behavior, which causes concern among those around him. Esteban, along with another character, approaches the huge doors of the palace. He announces that they have arrived, and it seems as if something important is waiting for them behind the doors. Mabel is very nervous and worried. She is afraid of the many people who are probably waiting for her outside the doors, and their stares make her very nervous. Esteban notices that Mabel is not looking well and tries to calm her down with concern. He assures her that there is nothing to be afraid of and puts his arm around her to support her through this difficult moment. Esteban explains to Mabel that she does not need to pay attention to others and look at those around her. He tries to relieve her tension, which calms her down a little despite her inner fear. Esteban prepares for the big announcement. Mabel, though still nervous, braces herself, sensing that the moment for which everything has been arranged is near. Mabel notices how everything suddenly becomes silent and realizes that all eyes in the room are on her. Her attention is drawn to the throne that seems to be intended for her. She sees extra chairs next to the throne and wonders if they might be for her and someone else. The tension builds, but she tries to hold on. Mabel sits down carefully on the throne, still unsure of why she has been given this place. Questions about her role and the reasons for such a formal setting arise in her mind. Esteban calls everyone to look up and introduces Mabel as his daughter, a statement that shocks her as she clearly did not expect such a loud confession. Little Mabel, with pink hair and blue eyes, sits on the throne confused. She does not understand why she is the center of attention. Her indecisiveness raises eyebrows among those around her, including Prince Oscar. The people around Mabel seem amazed. They admire her eyes full of purity and innocence. Mabel is confused by what is happening and mentally tries to understand how she ended up in this situation. Esteban the Emperor appears. His majestic figure emphasizes the contrast between the adult world and the little girl sitting on the throne. He humorously mentions her abilities, which amaze everyone. The courtiers discuss the situation and the closest assistants confirm. Mabel really has special talents. Her self-confidence is mixed with awkwardness. She wants to disappear, but the events continue. Mysterious messengers appear at the party. Mabel intuitively understands their danger. Her tension increases when she realizes that their goals may be connected to her. Esteban assures Mabel of her safety. He tells her that the attackers who tried to kidnap her will not appear again. Mabel is relieved, feeling safe with him. Mabel reflects that everything will be different now. She believes that with Esteban's protection, no one will be able to kidnap her. This thought brings her peace despite the bustle around her. Esteban turns to Mabel with a genuine smile. His kind words warm her heart. At that moment, their connection becomes obvious to everyone present. Oscar joins in the congratulations. His words, full of admiration, delight Mabel. She thanks him, and his sincerity makes this moment even more touching. Esteban tenderly wishes Mabel a happy birthday. This becomes the culmination of her day full of surprises. Their warm conversation completes the atmosphere of joy and love around her. Emperor Esteban shares with Mabel that he wanted to congratulate her earlier, but his father insisted that he do it first. The girl looks slightly puzzled, and Esteban's outburst seems touchingly childish. Oscar, with a confident smile, declares that he will be the first to give her a gift clearly competing with the emperor. Esteban reacts with mild surprise, but remains unperturbed. Oscar hands Mabel an elegant pendant, which immediately arouses her admiration. She looks at it with curiosity and delight, and her sincere gaze fills the atmosphere with warmth. Oscar explains that it is a present for her first birthday. Mabel is genuinely happy, thanks him. Her tenderness and sincerity soften hearts. Oscar smiles proudly, pleased with her reaction. Esteban, holding Mabel in his arms, tells her that the other gifts are also for her. The girl is slightly embarrassed, not knowing how to react to such attention. Her gaze falls on a huge mountain of presents decorated like a Christmas tree. Mabel is stunned by their number. She can't believe that all this is for her. There is tension among the guests. The gifts were not brought willingly. People hide their displeasure. Their forced smiles and cold gaze make Mabel feel slightly uneasy. The girl reflects on how burdensome it all is. She experiences internal conflict, feeling uncomfortable about a situation she was not prepared for. Esteban notices her excitement and rushes to dispel her doubts. He confidently reminds her that he has prepared something special for her and promises that a surprise awaits her. Mabel feels someone's gaze on her. The hooded stranger makes her wary, and she turns around trying to figure out who he is. Mystery hangs in the air. At Mabel's birthday party, Esteban makes a surprise announcement. Taking her hand, he says touching words full of meaning. Everyone present is amazed by this moment. Esteban bows solemnly to little Mabel, and with unusual seriousness, says that he is giving her a country. The girl looks at him in surprise, not understanding the scale of what she has heard. The thought flashes through her mind that this incredible statement is just a dream. Mabel feels reality becoming shaky and tries to comprehend what she has heard. Her mind is overwhelmed with emotions. The improbability of what is happening seems like an illusion to her. A crown appears before her eyes as if a symbol of confirmation of the emperor's words, but she still doubts. The emperor announces that he is abdicating the throne in favor of Mabel. His face expresses solemn satisfaction, but the girl's reaction is one of astonishment. She is unable to hide her surprise and exclaims. Mabel panics as she realizes that the weight of the entire country now rests on her shoulders. She struggles internally with her emotions as those around her watch in awe. The conspirators discuss their plan. One of them, sitting with a confident air, mentions their divine right. They seek to use Mabel for their own purposes, which causes concern for her future. Esteban watches the events unfold, preparing to confront his enemies. His tension increases, but he remains determined to protect Mabel, even if it leads to conflict. The Marquis tries to object to Esteban's decision to make Mabel Empress. His confusion is obvious, but the Emperor is confident in his choice and does not allow anyone to doubt it. Esteban sees letters from enemies and ponders how to get rid of the threat. He decides to find a way to prevent anyone from threatening Mabel's safety again. The Marquis says with indignation that he will not allow anyone to take his granddaughter. He is sure that the support of an influential ally will protect his rights. His determination makes one respect him. Esteban, after talking with the Marquis, is considering his next step. He is focused and confident in his actions, focused on implementing his plan. Oscar appears before his father. Despite his young age, he holds himself with remarkable dignity, demonstrating the maturity his position demands. The discussion of how strict lessons and pressure made Oscar so reserved sheds light on the difficulties he experienced under his tutelage. Esteban starts a conversation with his son. He asks if he really wants to become emperor, but the boy's eyes show uncertainty, which causes his father's doubts. Oscar admits that he himself is not sure of his desire. The idea of becoming an emperor was imposed on him, and he tries to live up to the expectations of those around him, although he is not sure if he wants it. Esteban realizes that his son was not given a choice. The throne has become a burden imposed on Oscar by his parents' will, which he obediently accepts as the meaning of life. However, the boy does not feel free to do things his own way. He is aware of his limited position, realizing that he cannot do only what he wants or avoid what is unpleasant to him. Esteban decides to abandon his plans to pass the throne to his son for the sake of Mabel so that she will be protected. He sincerely wants to hear Oscar's opinion about his intention. Oscar agrees with his father's decision. The scene ends the episode with a sense of mutual understanding and nascent hope for a new path. Esteban Tense tries to convince Oscar to make an important decision, but emphasizes that it is his choice alone. Oscar reflects and realizes that he is ready to do everything possible for Mela's safety. Realizing the importance of his role, Oscar decides to become a knight to protect Mela. His determination and sincere desire shine in his eyes, creating a moment full of hope and inspiration. Against the golden light of the tea, Esteban, in a moment of contemplation, agrees to the action, but does not hide his inner surprise at Oscar's decision. He understands how different the young prince is from his expectations. Esteban acknowledges Oscar's talent, ability to learn quickly, and ambition to surpass the emperor himself. He notes that the young prince is much stronger than he appears, which he admires. During a conversation with one of his advisors, Esteban wonders if Oscar himself said he did not want to become emperor. This surprises him, and he reflects on the fact that Mela gave Oscar's upbringing to Lisandro. Reflecting on his loved ones, Esteban admits that Mela understands Oscar better than anyone else. However, he realizes that the youngest princess will have a hard time handling political affairs without his help. The counselors discuss how even a young princess might prove better than the fickle emperor. However, they are confident that all real affairs will remain with Esteban and agree to support his decision. One by one, everyone agrees with Esteban's plans, acknowledging his wisdom and strength. However, Esteban wonders how others will react when the truth of the matter is revealed. A dark anger fills Esteban when he realizes that someone has dared to lay claim to his daughter. His rage grows, turning his emotions into a determination to protect his family. At the end of the segment, Mela appears, her red eyes sparkling and her face filled with confidence. She makes it clear that no one can take her daughter away, emphasizing strength and determination. The Marquis, addressing Mabel, calls her by name and suddenly announces that he is abdicating the throne in her favor. This causes shock among those present. Their faces show surprise and incomprehension. The crowd starts asking questions, trying to figure out why this decision was made. One man is confused about what is happening. Another man is unsure if this should be taken seriously. The tension mounts. Some of those present discuss the matter, wondering why Duchess Donovan seems to have no objection to the decision. Amidst the discussions, there is a realization that the situation is unpredictable. Elsewhere, the assembled church representatives discuss the fact that they will now be unable to take the princess back to Abelardo. They ponder the rightness of this state of affairs, recognizing its gravity. Church officials are coming to the conclusion that they cannot do anything for now. They are limited by the current situation and are forced to wait so as not to make things worse. At the same time, they understand that the princess's small body contains a huge holy power. If they wait until she awakens, everything will fall into place, and the situation will resolve itself. There comes a confidence that there is no need to worry about what to do next. After all, sooner or later, everything will be resolved, and there will be no more reasons for anxiety. The church decides to temporarily retreat, realizing that it is impossible to change the outcome of events at this point. Some of the representatives express dissatisfaction but are forced to agree. One of the clergy states that it is useless to try to intervene since the marquis abdicated in favor of the princess to stop their plans. When asked about their next steps, doubt arises as to whether they have a plan. The high priestess smiles and replies that she had a plan, but now everything has changed. This mysterious smile makes everyone wonder about her hidden intentions. A mysterious figure dressed in a white cloak attracts the attention of the crowd, causing whispers and confusion. Her confidence leaves those around her frozen in bewilderment as she asserts her point of view, rejecting any criticism. Young Mabel, with a gentle gaze, listens to the words that she will one day blossom. These words bring hope and inspiration, emphasizing her hidden potential that will be revealed in the future. The scene shifts to the red staircase in the divine temple. A mysterious voice promises that having gained strength, Mabel will find her own way, striving towards a great goal illuminated by golden lights. The expressive smile of the figure in white emphasizes Mabel's uniqueness. This person claims that her unique ability to drive people crazy is her gift, which must be fully revealed. Emperor Esteban, looking at what is happening, experiences conflicting emotions. His face reflects restrained disappointment as if he expected more. His reaction seems cold and reserved. Esteban considers how perhaps by making a fuss he could raise the question of diplomatic exile. However, he decides that he has said all he can and lets it go. His attention shifts to caring for Mabel. He holds the girl in his arms, reminding himself that she is his responsibility and he must take care of her future no matter what the difficulties. Esteban worried about Mabel's health, wonders how she will take the events, but he realizes that at her young age, she is not yet capable of comprehending the gravity of the situation. Mabel suddenly realizes her fate and screams in shock. Her emotions are vivid, her eyes wide, and her words emphasize her confusion and fear of her new responsibilities. Esteban, hearing her cries, says her name with emotion, his gaze reflecting sudden anxiety and the realization that caring for Mabel requires more from him than he had expected. Esteban, dressed in imperial robes, experiences an unfortunate encounter. He is sharply called a fool, and the atmosphere becomes tense. He hangs his head in tension, lost in his thoughts. A woman in a pink dress hurries towards him, asking him what's wrong, clearly surprised and alarmed, and her manner indicates Esteban's high status. Esteban's frustration deepens as he mentally reminds those around him that he is only 1 year old, a fact that emphasizes his youth despite his burdensome responsibilities. Mabel remembers her childhood with Esteban. His care was shown in simple moments, when he comforted her, worried about her tears, which adds a softness to his image. Mabel's recollections continue. Esteban has strived from an early age to live up to his role as heir, putting forth every effort to study and improve himself. These efforts earn her respect and sadness. The news spreads throughout the palace that the princess is crying. The audience whispers, condemning her emotions, but this only highlights Mabel's loneliness and inner struggle. Esteban feels unfair. The country is in the hands of a child, and everyone around him silently accepts it. His anger and impotence are noticeable despite his outward restraint. He orders the woman in the pink dress to leave the scene with Mabel, a moment that highlights his responsibility for his sister's well-being. Mabel lies in bed reflecting on the events that have happened. She admits that she has cried a lot and feels tired and depressed, which makes her image more vulnerable. In her thoughts, Mabel questions her role. Why was she put on the throne if she had not yet been crowned? These doubts highlight her confusion and disorientation. The Marquis, looking thoughtfully at little Mabel, sees in her the heir to the marquisate. Given his complicated relationship with the Emperor, he understands that this could lead to new conflicts. His face reflects anxiety. The man notices the strange calm of Emperor Esteban the day before. There is suspicion hidden in his gaze because this cold calculation may foreshadow something important and unexpected. Esteban and Duchess Donovan look at the situation with apparent indifference. Mabel, though small, feels the pressure of those around her because their conversations concern her future. At the ceremony, surrounded by tense faces, Mabel feels fear and danger. Her thoughts are filled with panic. It's as if everyone is conspiring against her, and this is what scares her the most. Waking up in terror, Mabel screams, terrified by her nightmares, her inner world shattered by the images she saw and those around her trying to understand what is happening. The servants try to comfort the crying girl, but their attempts look awkward. Mabel bursts into tears, and those around her wonder what exactly is troubling the child so much. They remember Mabel crying all day yesterday. Her mood today is even more incomprehensible, and the absence of an important figure nearby only increases her anger. Reflecting on the unpredictability of children, adults try to find an approach to little Mabel. She in turn whispers something unintelligible, but it clearly expresses her resentment. With anger in her eyes, Mabel clutches the sheet in her hands. She struggles with her emotions, experiencing a surge of anger at everyone she feels is to blame for her misfortunes. Mabel, seeing the imaginary Esteban sitting on the throne with a smug smile, decides that directing her anger at him is the right thing to do. Her resolve grows stronger. Mabel, a little girl with pink hair, surprises everyone by saying the word "daddy" for the first time. Her parents react with awe and excitement, discussing what she means by the word. A smile lights up the woman's face when she realizes that Mabel is actually trying to call the Emperor daddy. This causes a surge of emotion, and those around her begin to speculate about her sweet intention. The servant informs the woman that the Emperor is in the dining room. Thanking him, she prepares to meet him, holding Mabel as if planning how to introduce the girl to the Emperor. Against the backdrop of the sunset, Mabel expresses her determination to achieve her goal of meeting the Emperor. She is internally determined to prove something important, even if it seems difficult for someone her age. With fiery determination, Mabel clings to her mother as if preparing for an important meeting. The woman supports her confidence, preparing the girl for the moment that could change their future. Step by step, supported by her mother, Mabel learns to walk. Their joy increases when she takes several confident steps forward with difficulty, but successfully getting closer to her goal. There is one word spinning in the girl's head: Emperor. Her serious look reflects her small but strong desire to achieve that he notices her. She is full of determination. Concentrating, Mabel continues to walk, each step an expression of her strong character, and her eyes sparkle with the desire to finally meet the one she wants to call her father. When Mabel sees the Emperor, she rushes forward with fury and determination, forcing everyone around her to pay attention to her. She does everything in her power to achieve what she wants. Coming closer, the girl stands firmly on her feet. The Emperor, surprised by her determination, looks at her. All that is left for her is to prove that her presence next to him matters. The little girl Mabel, seeing Esteban, cried out joyfully and called him daddy, which touched him to the depths of his soul. This moment filled the space with warmth and light, as if happiness itself had descended to earth. Esteban approached Mabel with a wide smile, asking her playfully if she missed him. But her answer was decisive and emotional. She expressed her disagreement, accompanying her words with funny punches. Esteban, holding back his laughter, decided that since Mabel was so insistent on calling him, he could not help but come. He embraced her tenderly, emphasizing that it was his duty to take care of her. Mabel considered her futile attempt to stab him. She sadly concluded that Esteban's body was too strong for her efforts. Esteban humorously remarked that he needed to give Mabel a gift that would make her happy. In response, she thoughtfully uttered the word revenge, but realized that her strength was clearly insufficient. Mabel, watching Esteban, realized that as an adult, he had access to everything, including his favorite ice cream. She felt a little envious thinking about her adult consciousness in a child's body. Esteban called Mabel by name and offered her some ice cream. The girl, at first surprised, quickly agreed, and the sweet treat brought her genuine joy. The taste of the ice cream delighted Mabel, and she greedily enjoyed every bite. At that moment, she felt incredibly happy, as if returning to her childhood. Esteban asked her with a smile if she liked the ice cream and if she wanted more. Mabel nodded affirmatively, continuing to enjoy the dessert with genuine joy. But Mabel soon remembered that her visit had not been for the treat. She began to think about her original purpose, wondering how ice cream had distracted her from the main thing. Mabel realizes with chagrin that she has given in to temptation like a child, and her temper is showing. Her fist clenches in self-disappointment, and her mood has clearly worsened. The emotionally charged moment continues when someone calls her name. Mabel looks around with obvious irritation, ready to take her frustration out on those around her. She screams out in anger that her father is not like that. Her big blue eyes are full of tears and despair, which increases the tension of the moment. Esteban, clearly surprised by her words, asks again. The atmosphere becomes heavier as those around them begin to realize the hidden problems in their relationship. Mabel responds sharply, directing all her anger and frustration towards Esteban. His shock at her behavior makes the situation even more dramatic. She continues to scream at him, to leave her small hands shaking, and it is clear that she is on the verge of a breakdown. Esteban tries to figure out what's going on. His voice softens, but Mabel reiterates her position, pushing away his attempts to get closer. Raising her voice, she again emphasizes her displeasure, and those around her begin to eavesdrop on what is happening, surprised by her harshness. Esteban, showing patience, promises to return later. However, Mabel is still intransigent and stubbornly insists on her own. Esteban leaves the room and his confidants discuss what happened. The atmosphere around Esteban is full of tension because everyone understands that his daughter feels serious anger towards him. During a tense conversation, Mabel says her name with a haughty smile, declaring that Esteban is now on her unloved list. The emotional atmosphere heats up, hinting at their complicated relationship. Esteban, outraged by her words, reacts with a burst of anger, calling her behavior madness. His tense expression underscores his internal conflict and the growing complexity of their interaction. Esteban leaves the room in a state of deep disappointment. He remembers how after each of their meetings, Mabel would angrily chase him away, causing only pain and sadness. Mabel sits in her room, thinking about what is happening. She realizes that simply banishing the Emperor will not solve the problem. She thinks about how to find a way to change the situation. A smiling Oscar enters the room, greeting Mabel. His friendly tone and positive mood contrast with her dark thoughts, adding a bright moment to the story. Esteban gently explains to Mabel that despite her desire not to become Empress, he is forced to make a decision for her safety. He regrets it, but believes it is best for her. Mabel, small and innocent, tries to understand his words, looking at him with bewilderment. Esteban sadly adds that it is necessary to protect her. His bright yellow eyes express a mixture of anxiety and determination. It is a difficult decision, but he is convinced that it is the right step for her future. As Esteban ponders her words, he suddenly realizes that Mabel has her own understanding of the world. Her childish puati, which he interprets as sorry, touches him. He smiles, realizing how difficult it can be to communicate with a child. Mabel, in turn, smiles back at him, telling him that he has nothing to apologize for. Her pink hair and bright smile make the moment warm and sincere. She makes it clear that she appreciates his concern. Esteban admits that he himself wanted her to become Empress. He reflects on her training and expresses confidence that her efforts were not in vain. Her upbringing is preparing her for a great future, even if she does not yet understand it. He shares that his little sister will eventually take the throne, and his role is to prepare Mabel for her destiny. He is genuinely worried that he won't be there if something goes wrong. Esteban suddenly reveals that he never sought power himself. He is happy that he will be able to stay by Mabel's side and help her. His words are filled with sincerity, and he hugs her tightly as if promising to be there. Mabel, though small, listens to him attentively. She looks at him with trust, and her eyes express her reluctance to disturb him. It is as if she wants to say that she believes in his words. The scene switches to a council meeting where Esteban holds his own, despite the tense atmosphere. His tough demeanor contrasts with his gentleness toward Mabel. The counselors discuss the problems of the southern mines, but he remains calm. They notice that Duke Javier, who had been sent out on reconnaissance, is returning. Esteban, with a sly smile, notes the odd timing of his appearance. His decisiveness once again comes to the fore, showing him to be a strong ruler. Duke Javier, a mysterious aristocrat from the Royalist Party, ponders his actions. No one knows his true intentions. He carefully conceals his steps, making those around him guess about his goals. Meanwhile, Duke Conrad, a cunning politician, appropriates the income of the southern mines, but there is no direct evidence of his machinations. The spies try to find evidence against Duke Conrad, but he skillfully manipulates the situation to avoid being exposed. He does nothing with his own hands, masterfully using others to carry out his dirty deeds. The situation remains tense, forcing Javier to think of new ways to influence. Javier's secret calculation sheds light on the destruction and subjugation of other aristocratic families by Duke Conrad. Despite the losses, Javier has an opportunity to change the balance of power. He decides to act, leaving no chance for the enemy to continue his games, understanding the importance of his every step. At a council of nobles, the atmosphere is tense. Hidden suspicions hang in the air. One of the participants, sensing something is wrong, notices a worsening mood. At this point, Esteban decisively ends the meeting, making it clear that their differences need to be resolved quickly and clearly. Esteban suddenly becomes ill, shocking everyone present. His weakened state causes concern, and his closest aides rush to support him. It is obvious that the overload and responsibility of state affairs are beginning to negatively affect his health. Concern for the emperor's well-being is growing. His loyal assistant wonders if Esteban can cope with such a hectic lifestyle. Meanwhile, Esteban himself admits that he lacks peace and recuperation, hinting at the important role of one person close to him. Thoughts about Esteban haunt those around him. One of his advisors realizes how many problems and worries fall on the emperor's shoulders. He sincerely worries about the health and well-being of the ruler, knowing that the country cannot afford to lose him at such an important moment. In Esteban's office, another dialogue about his health arises. The assistant, concerned about the emperor's condition, expresses his concern. However, Esteban wearily notes that his health is discussed too often, as if someone wants him to go, which leads to awkwardness. The advisor insistently reminds the emperor of the importance of proper nutrition and rest. He is concerned that Esteban is skipping meals, which is further aggravating his weakness. Despite his concern, the emperor maintains a serious appearance, making it clear that he has more important matters to worry about. Esteban understands that despite his intense responsibilities, he needs to take care of himself for the future. He is considering how to find a balance between work and leisure so that he can continue to effectively manage the country. His entourage remains close by, ready to support him during this difficult period. Esteban glared at Oscar, who looked confused under his stern gaze. Despite the tension in their interaction, Esteban's thoughts were preoccupied with his recent refusal to communicate with his daughter, which was causing him pain and confusion. Oscar tried to console the emperor, but his gaze was full of sadness and compassion. Esteban took this with mixed feelings, as he knew that the situation concerned him personally. Esteban sarcastically noted that Oscar clearly did not have enough work to be so free. Oscar cried out in fear, trying to explain that he had recently accompanied the princess on a walk at her request, which had caused an unexpected reaction from the emperor. The reminder of Mabel's walk caused a flash of emotion in Esteban. His gaze turned cold, and he thought hard about her motives, feeling uneasy. In response, he wondered what was behind her actions. When Oscar tried to avoid contact with the emperor, he complained vehemently about it, but then admitted that he was still concerned for Esteban's safety. His emotions alternated between fear and concern. Later, Esteban and Oscar met in the garden. The conversation began with a formal greeting, but soon Esteban noticed that Mabel's hair had grown a little. This small detail brought back fond memories. Esteban noted with a slight smile that the girl had grown a little. Oscar carefully invited him to come closer and take a closer look, but the emperor remained reserved, in no hurry to take the initiative. Looking out at the garden, Esteban admitted that he would have liked to approach Mabel, but something inside him was holding him back. His thoughts deepened, and he seemed to be lost in his own emotions. Esteban thought about the reasons for the estrangement between him and Mabel. It hurt him to realize that he did not understand anything, and this filled his heart with a feeling of sadness and loneliness. Mabel, sitting on the bench with another child, seemed calm. She felt that she was being watched, and this caused a slight anxiety. Her intuition sensed the hidden presence of Esteban, who did not dare to come closer. Mabel tries to say the word, but the difficulty of pronunciation results in confusion. Oscar asks again, making fun of her efforts, which causes the girl to feel embarrassed and annoyed. She mentally worries about when she will learn to speak clearly and confidently. Sitting next to Oscar, Mabel suddenly jumps up, noticing something unexpected. Her reaction is so violent that she exclaims in surprise and excitement, pointing out what has happened. A fluffy cat with beautiful golden fur appears in front of Mabel. The girl tries to imitate the sounds the cat makes with delight, but her meowing is awkward due to her excitement. Oscar laughs, encouraging her. Mabel plucks up her courage and carefully picks up the cat. Her eyes reflect awe and joy as if she were holding something precious. The cat, however, suddenly expresses his displeasure by meowing loudly. The cat's reaction stuns Mabel. Her thoughts are filled with questions. Where did this furry creature get such impudence, and where is her previous mood? However, fear quickly gives way to determination to understand the strange behavior. Oscar notices Mabel's confusion and reassures her. He suggests that the girl imagined that the cat was talking to her. However, everything takes a different turn when Mabel is convinced that her hearing was not deceiving her. The cat suddenly attracts attention, softly saying something as if addressing Mabel. The girl is shocked. She feels that in front of her is not an ordinary animal at all. Fear and admiration are mixed in her head. Looking into the cat's bright green eyes, Mabel realizes that he is indeed trying to get his point across. At first it seems impossible, but the cat's expression is too self-aware to doubt it. Mabel, shaken to the core, barely holds back her emotions. She feels like reality is failing her and that she is about to lose consciousness. She does not know how to cope with this strange revelation. Meanwhile, the cat, leaving the girl in her thoughts, proudly shows her a piece of meat as if he wants to treat her. But Mabel, losing patience with a playful reproach, tells him to try the treat himself, which causes Oscar, who is watching the scene, to laugh. A small ginger cat with a displeased look declares that he is not a cat at all, but a holy lion sent to protect a little girl, Mabel. He is indignant at being mistaken for a simple animal and reminds that he does not need cat food. The lion explains that his appearance is deceiving. Despite looking like a cat, he demands human treats. Mabel remembers how this mythical beast was born on the same day as her. The holy lion explains that his mission is to protect Mabel. Although the girl is dubious about his holiness, the lion warns that he hears her every thought, demanding more respect. One of the maids jokes that the mythical lion actually looks cute, although he acts like a real maniac. Mabel does not understand why her protector is so arrogant. Mabel's walk ends abruptly when her female companions announce that she must return to try on new dresses. The lion, left hungry, is indignant at being abandoned. Mabel leaves with the escorts, reluctant to leave the lion, but is persuaded to hurry. The lion is left alone, discontented, grumbling about his empty bowl. Mabel notices a man she hasn't seen in a long time. It's Esteban, the young emperor she hasn't seen in a long time. The girl recalls hearing about Esteban's recent fainting spell at one of the meetings. She is genuinely concerned about his health and asks how he is feeling. Esteban, however, passes by without paying any attention to her. His silence leaves Mabel surprised and bitter. The girl resentfully wonders why the emperor ignored her, feeling agitated and bewildered by his cold attitude. Mabel, a girl with pink hair and bright blue eyes, reflects on her childhood. She considered herself strange, tried not to cry and not to attract attention. She understands that parents do not like strange children, so she suppressed her emotions. Esteban, the young emperor, watches Mabel with restraint. He notes that the girl is doing well and is quietly happy for her, but at the same time he fights the urge to express his feelings. Esteban's internal conflict intensifies. He realizes that he wants to hug Mabel, but he understands that she is not yet ready for such a display of intimacy. He restrains himself so as not to violate her boundaries. Esteban turns his attention to his current duties, particularly preparations for Mabel's upcoming coronation. He heads toward the majestic palace, pondering her future as heir. As time passes, a special bond is formed between them. It's been a month since they met, and now their relationship is filled with warmth. Mabel is slowly starting to feel more comfortable around him. Mabel lies in her room filled with comfort and flowers. She finally feels safe, as if her night of loneliness has given way to a long-awaited dawn. The day of the ceremony arrives. The majestic hall is filled with light, and Mabel prepares for the important event. Her name is called, and the atmosphere around her becomes solemn and tense. There is a noise in the hall, and Esteban comes out to the assembled. His image causes awe. He looks majestic and confident, ready to fulfill his duties to the country. Esteban turns and meets Mabel's eyes. He smiles warmly at her, and in that moment she realizes she's missed him. Their connection becomes more obvious despite the reticence. Mabel notices her emotions and wonders why she is happy. She feels her heart warmer and realizes that she has become closer to Esteban over the past month. Esteban sits in a luxurious room in formal attire preparing for an important event. Mabel wakes up realizing that she is not in her room. She is puzzled by the unusual luxurious surroundings. The girl remembers that she fell asleep in her room, but now she is in a completely different place. She is surprised to see the solemn atmosphere and many people around. Mabel is confused as she sees what is happening. She notices that everyone's attention is on her, which increases her panic. She begins to realize that she is in the middle of something very important. Esteban announces the succession. Mabel's eyes are frozen in surprise when he says her name. The girl realizes that she has become a key figure in this event. A crown appears before Mabel, and they are about to place it on her. At that moment, it dawns on her that this is a coronation ceremony. She is shocked and does not understand how she ended up in this situation. Horrified, she refuses the new role, loudly declaring that she does not want to become Empress. Her emotional protest fills the room with tension. She starts running, feeling unprepared to take on such responsibility. Her panic reaches its peak as she runs away from the whole situation like a small child in the wrong place. The crown falls, making a loud sound. Everyone's eyes turn to Mabel, who freezes, realizing that her actions have caused shock in those present. Suddenly jumping up, she pushes the crown away from her, declaring that she does not want to see it anymore. Her gesture symbolizes her inner despair and desire to escape the pressure. Esteban, watching Mabel, reacts with some disappointment but restrained. The others present look stunned by her action, and the girl herself feels even more unwilling to live up to expectations. Mabel, a girl with pink hair and blue eyes, looks at the person in front of her in surprise, wondering what is going on. At this time, Esteban, standing in front of her, begins to clap his hands with a slight smile, as if expressing approval. Mabel is confused, trying to understand what kind of strange thing she just did. The crowd around Mabel watching speaks admiringly of her actions. They discuss her determination and praise her as a future leader, noting her clear expression of thoughts and energy. The atmosphere is filled with approval and wonder, and the people are sure that she will become an outstanding ruler. Esteban, watching the scene, expresses pride in his daughter, mentioning her amazing qualities. Mabel is confused, not understanding how her action caused such a storm of emotions. Her surprise only increases when she sees how everyone's attention is focused on her. Esteban, demonstrating his intentions, places the crown in front of Mabel. The girl looks at it in surprise, not knowing how to react to this symbol of power. Her thoughts are filled with bewilderment because she did not even imagine that she could receive such recognition. Esteban declares that the old must go, symbolizing this by discarding the old crown, which he places aside. For Mabel, this is the moment when she realizes that she must walk a new path, one that brings change and responsibility for the future. The empire celebrates the ascension of a new empress. At the ceremony, little Mabel, wearing a crown, looks confused, wondering how she came to be ruler. The atmosphere is solemn, but the child's face is filled with genuine shock. The audience in the hall honors the Empress with admiration. However, Gustav, observing Mabel, understands her inner confusion. Realizing the weight of her new status, he is ready to support her despite her childish age. The temple where the coronation takes place sparkles with gold and grandeur. However, Mabel has only one thought in her head: there is no hope. The realization of responsibility causes her fear, which she cannot hide behind a crown. After the ceremony, Mabel's memories flash back to her first birthday. That was when she heard that the country was doomed. Those words about her future left a deep imprint on her soul. She is transferred to a new room, luxurious and spacious but foreign. The girl longs for the former comfort. She feels isolated in the huge palace, which seems to emphasize her loneliness. Gustav, the new assistant appointed by the previous emperor, appears before her. He greets her, assuring her that he will support her with all his strength because his family considers serving the emperor their highest honor. Gustav vows to always be there, but his enthusiasm only makes Mabel rebel. She wants her freedom back and to escape the responsibility that no one seems to have asked her if she is ready to accept. However, Gustav stands firm. He states that Mabel can rest today, but tomorrow he will take up his duties. His confidence leaves no room for refusal. Gustav, in a cheerful and light mood, reminds her that tomorrow her day will begin with a meeting. He looks happy and determined to begin her training. Mabel does not share his enthusiasm. Mabel doesn't understand how anyone can delegate work to a child. Her thoughts are full of protest. Why should she sit in on meetings? Her discontent leads to a comical but desperate realization that there is a difficult road ahead. Little Mabel, dressed in an elegant gown, sat on a throne surrounded by the luxurious decorations of the palace. She looked at the woman who bowed before her, who invited her to come out and play. The girl frowned in displeasure, her childish face expressing weariness from duties unsuited to her age. She barely understood what was happening, but already she felt the burden of power. As the woman removed her gloves, Mabel's mind was seething. Her indignation was growing. How could she possibly run a country when even simple things like taking off her clothes were difficult? Her anger found vent in screaming accompanied by excessive gesticulation. It was truly stressful for a child who found herself at the pinnacle of power at such a young age. Mabel was sure that the country was under threat. Her thoughts grew darker as she imagined everything around her cracking and falling apart. It seemed to her that the inevitable destruction of this world was only a matter of time. Deciding to take her fate into her own hands, she promised herself to change everything despite her childish weaknesses. Sitting on her throne, Mabel wondered if she could stand this test. Her small hands clutched the toy nervously as she imagined her path to downfall. For the first time, she realized that her only dream now was to be overthrown. The thought strangely gave her confidence because it seemed more achievable than becoming the perfect ruler. The servants and advisors watched the clocks, nervously waiting for the appointed time. Their conversations reflected their anxiety. Time seemed frozen, and everyone seemed to be waiting for an eternity. Somewhere off to the side, a group of children played with toys while the adults discussed the future of the kingdom, trying not to look in the direction of the throne room. One of the courtiers expressed concern that Her Majesty was away from important meetings. Meanwhile, the Marquis, a blond man with a mustache, was pleased to note that he would now be able to spend more time with Mabel. A smug smile lit up his face because this situation played into his hands. Javier, a man with bright red hair, entered the room. His confident gait and elegant suit commanded respect. He looked happy and confident. The Marquis greeted him reservedly, but their glances betrayed a hidden tension, as if their smiles hid real intentions. Javier gave a brief report on the reconnaissance in the south, confirming that everything had gone smoothly. But he emphasized that many interesting events had occurred during his absence. His enigmatic smile and calm tone aroused the interest of those around him, hinting that changes had already begun in the palace. After the Empress's death, the court was shaken by rumors about the extraordinary nature of the young princess. Many expected something incredible from her, but in the end, Mabel turned out to be just a 1-year-old child. However, her father, who loved his daughter immensely, insisted that the throne go to her. This decision caused mixed feelings among the courtiers. The picture was completed by a crown slightly too big for her head, symbolizing her unsuitable status. Despite the obvious difficulties, no one dared to challenge the will of the emperor. Mabel, looking at the adults around her, began to realize that her fate had already been predetermined, and now everything depended on her own actions. The mustachioed Marquis and Duke Javier discuss recent events, mockingly emphasizing their confidence in their superiority, despite unexpected circumstances. They wait for their new ruler to prove herself in matters of state. Mabel, a little girl with pink hair, finds herself at the center of their discussion, demonstrating her cuteness but hidden strength. The arrival of the Imperial Majesty is announced. The tension increases when the door opens. A young man appears whose appearance evokes admiration and respect. His presence disrupts the usual course of events, hinting at upcoming changes. Mabel's presence captivates everyone gathered. She appears innocent and sweet, but her gaze is filled with curiosity and hidden wisdom. People comment on how charming she is up close, highlighting the contrast between her vulnerability and her inner strength. Esteban, the former emperor, suddenly appears in the hall, holding Mabel in his arms. His appearance is a shock, and his icy gaze reminds everyone of his former power. He demands that those present show due respect to their new ruler, hinting at the seriousness of the moment. Everyone in the meeting is taken aback by Esteban's unexpected appearance. They try to cope with the sudden change of events, noting that his presence was not planned. The mood in the room becomes tense as he announces the start of a discussion of important issues. Mabel finds herself in the middle of the meeting, sitting on Esteban's lap. She feels uneasy, aware that her presence is causing so much commotion. At this time, an important topic is being discussed concerning aid in one of the remote provinces. The mysterious Devlin Devil appears again on the border. His actions are alarming, but this time he behaves differently. The threat associated with this mysterious character and the possible consequences of his return are discussed. Recalling how the devil once saved Mabel by appearing in the midst of chaos, it makes one wonder if hiding him in the past was the right decision. This connection between the girl and the mysterious savior opens up a new layer to her story. Despite the growing danger, Mabel finds that she cannot ignore her knowledge of what is happening. Meanwhile, another divorce petition involving Viscount Vincent is brought up for debate, adding to the drama of the proceedings. It turns out that Viscount Vincent has made similar claims several times, each time causing a scandal. His actions cause outrage in the hall, and everyone discusses his behavior. The meeting is approaching the peak of tension, preparing for new turns in the fate of the empire. Esteban holds little Mabel on his lap, wondering how he came to have her. He soon expresses his surprise, calling the girl illegitimate. However, this news shocks everyone. It turns out that Mabel's mother is the Viscount's wife, who died tragically under strange circumstances during her pregnancy. This situation raises many questions and tension in the room. The story reveals the tragedy's past. The woman lived in an outbuilding where the stairs suddenly collapsed. As a result of the fall, she lost her child, but the accusations against the Viscount seem unfair. The Viscount claims that he sent her there for safety. However, this excuse causes mistrust among those around her, leaving a sense of hidden intrigue and betrayal. The death of the Viscount's wife leaves him without heirs. He soon declares that he will pass on his family name to the child born of his mistress. This news causes indignation, especially in Mabel, who despite her young age begins to show determination. Her indignation grows into furious anger, instilling fear in those around her. Mabel slams her fist on the table and demands justice. Her cries for the guilty to be punished make everyone in the room tense. Esteban is surprised that such a young girl can express such strong emotions, but remains composed as he watches her indomitable determination to restore order. Her loud words attract the attention of those around her. The others, not understanding the childish cries, begin to ask again what she means. At this point, Mabel loudly repeats that the culprit must be punished. Her sincere anger makes the situation both serious and comical, as the adults are perplexed as to how to respond. Mabel's long repetition of demands causes mixed emotions among the adults. People begin to whisper, wondering how best to calm the girl down. But her persistence wins out. Even the sternest faces in the room can't stand the tension and start laughing. Emotions reach a peak, making the atmosphere in the room slightly absurd. One of the courtiers sitting at the table breaks down and laughs loudly. His infectious laughter causes those around him to laugh even louder. Mabel is surprised by this reaction. Her determination should have scared everyone, but instead it is received with good-natured humor. The Marquis also can't hide his laughter. He clutches his heart as if trying to suppress his mirth and declares that he simply can't bear such a moment. Esteban, watching this, feels slightly confused but remains serious, holding the girl who is perplexed by what is happening around her. Mabel looks at the laughing adults with obvious irritation. She doesn't understand why her words are perceived as a joke. Her big blue eyes fill with indignation and her lips press into a firm line. For her, this is not a game, but a question of honor and justice. The tension gives way to a final comical denouement. Mabel loudly declares that the situation is not a reason for jokes. Her childish determination simultaneously evokes respect and affection in the adults. But her seriousness is unable to stop the fun, leaving Esteban in confusion and the audience in sincere admiration for her courage. Little Mabel is indignantly aware that her edict has been taken as a joke. Lying on her stomach, she shows her indignation by staring at the juicy strawberries. Her young age clearly does not prevent her from showing her temper. Taking advantage of the situation, the employees cleverly convince the little girl to put a stamp on an important document. Their true intentions are revealed when they giggle watching how she confidently fulfills their request, not understanding the consequences. Mabel, despite her efforts, is aware of her vulnerability. Her only weapon is to pound her fists on the floor, demonstrating all her rage. She is convinced that one day she will certainly be dethroned, and this thought seems inevitable to her. A blond boy with a mischievous smile appears greeting Mabel. She is amazed by his appearance and begins to fantasize about what he will become in the future. Her childish curiosity clearly gets the better of her. Suddenly, her attention shifts to the white-haired boy Oscar. He sternly reprimands his friend for scaring Mabel. The situation becomes more serious, and Mabel finds herself the center of their attention. The blonde, slightly embarrassed, apologizes to Mabel for frightening her. Oscar, in turn, takes Mabel in his arms, as if protecting her from everyone around. Emotions are tense, but sincerity is visible in every gesture. Mabel is stunned to learn that the blonde boy's name is Oscar. Her perception is turned upside down as it is the first time she sees him in this light. The situation makes her think. Oscar quietly asks his friend to be quiet, avoiding further explanation. Mabel learns that the boys are her fencing classmates, which adds a new twist to the situation. Mabel finds herself face to face with a boy who introduces himself as Enrique Javier. His friendly gaze and soft words inspire confidence in her, despite all her childish wariness. Oscar intervenes sharply, reminding Enrique of the rules of etiquette. Enrique, realizing his mistake, apologizes to Mabel, admitting that her presence has thrown him off kilter. The scene ends with a slight tension reflecting the unique dynamic of the characters. Mabel, the pink-haired girl, watched the scene around her with slight confusion. Her attempt to help ended awkwardly, causing mixed feelings among those around her. Prince Oscar looked embarrassed, and his eyes sparkled with embarrassment. He clearly felt guilty about something and tried to justify himself by asking for forgiveness from Mabel, who looked at him with surprise. The prince nervously extended his hand to Mabel, begging for forgiveness. Her gaze softened, and she came closer. Their dialogue became emotional as the girl touched his head as if consoling him. The gesture evoked an inner thrill in the prince. He froze, feeling the warmth, and realized that this moment meant more to him than he could have ever imagined. The Marquis, watching the situation from the side, decided to intervene. His voice was stern, but there was concern in it. He called the girl by her title, showing respect. Mabel, holding back her emotions, looked at him and said words that the prince took as mercy. Her forgiveness gave him relief, and this gave the moment an air of lightness and sincerity. Oscar, stunned, looked at Mabel and felt a little deprived of her attention. His indignation burst forth. He wanted her to show the same warmth to him. The girl was surprised by his demand, but her sincerity and innocence helped to maintain an atmosphere of friendship. His words sounded like a request for acceptance. Mabel, standing between the two boys, seemed confident, but inside she was filled with mixed feelings. The situation with the children was causing her inner confusion, but her kindness helped smooth out the rough spots. They looked at her with hope, and her understanding helped create an aura of calm and support around her. The atmosphere changed when a mysterious hooded demon stepped into action. His figure was dark, and his face was filled with hidden menace. He watched the scene with cold indifference, as if waiting for the right moment to intervene. His words were laced with mystery, and they created a sense of impending danger. The demon addressed the unknown knight, reminding him of his oath and orders. His words were full of sarcasm and mockery, and his instructions sounded like a sentence. He made it clear that nothing could destroy his power. The image of the demon and the blood on the sword created a tense and dramatic contrast to the previous scenes. The demon's gaze fell on someone sitting in front of him. The man seemed broken, lost in his own dark thoughts. It was as if the demon was feeding on his despair, letting him know that there would be no escape from this darkness. His figure was surrounded by magic, adding to the feeling of unrelenting pressure on the one standing before him. In the silence of the room, the dark-eyed man realized the depth of his situation. His thoughts revolved around the desire to find a way to free himself from slavery. The life that had given him an immortal body had become an endless struggle for the meaning of existence. A spark of determination appeared in his eyes despite the darkness that surrounded him. He realized that Mabel could be the key to his wish. Her strength and sincerity inspired hope that she could change his fate. His red eyes shone with a mixture of despair and hope. At that moment, he decided to act, believing that the girl could fulfill his deepest desire. Gustav, the new assistant, introduced himself respectfully to Mabel, the young Empress. He seemed sincere and tried to show that his concern for the girl was genuine. The surroundings were majestic but strict, and little Mabel, not yet accustomed to such conditions, only watched, remaining silent and a little confused. Mabel looked tiredly at those around her, her face expressing indifference to everything that was happening. She was asked if she liked the food, to which she quietly agreed. There was a slight sadness in her gaze, as if the girl was only submitting to someone else's will and not expressing her true desires. Gustav enthusiastically praised Mabel for her choice and was glad to see her content. He suggested that they go to the meeting where a new duty awaited her. The girl, silently accepting his words, nodded as if realizing that she could no longer refuse the path offered to her. When Gustav decided to pick her up to carry her to the meeting, Mabel began to protest. Her eyes filled with tears and her face expressed hurt. She showed that she did not want to follow him. Her protest looked like an attempt to preserve at least a small part of her freedom. Mabel thought about the 4 months that had passed since her coronation. Her life had changed completely, and she had become more reserved and mature than her age would allow. She had become accustomed to high-quality food and a new role, but childhood was far behind her. Thinking back to the early days of her reign, Mabel realized that people admired her abilities and eloquence. That amazement turned to respect, and the girl realized that her words had power. She accepted this as her new reality and even found positive aspects in it. Her thoughts led to a painful realization. Mabel realized that she had not been put on the throne by accident. Someone wanted to use her, calling her a divine gift, and she had become a tool in someone else's hands. This knowledge made her feel vulnerable and afraid. Mabel's mind flashed to Esteban, the former emperor who had left the throne for her. He had done so to protect the girl and not allow others to control her destiny. This act surprised her, and at the same time filled her heart with gratitude, but it also raised many questions. She couldn't understand why Esteban had given up power for her. These thoughts haunted her because his actions had a deep meaning that the girl couldn't comprehend yet. His actions seemed mysterious and touching to her at the same time. Esteban, despite her aloofness, continued to be kind and caring. He invited Mabel to accompany him to the meeting. The girl noticed the sincerity and care in his words. This moment awakened in her a feeling of warmth and trust that she had been missing. Mabel, with pink hair, is furiously indignant, pointing at something outrageous. She reminds that she cannot be ignored after being dethroned. Her emotions convey wounded dignity. She feels insulted and will not forgive those who offended her so easily. Esteban walks next to the man holding Mabel. He asks a tense question about why the man is so close to his daughter. The man calmly answers so that he doesn't lose his temper. Esteban is clearly jealous and doesn't hide it, which creates a tense atmosphere between them. During the formal meeting, the mustachioed marquis expresses his joy that the emperor is in good health. The atmosphere seems formal but tense. Meanwhile, Mabel sits in her chair, her hair in 2 ponytails. She does not hide her irritation at the situation, watching the proceedings with skepticism. Mabel notices someone complimenting her appearance, which leaves her confused. She blushes, becomes embarrassed, and then angrily demands that they stop saying such things to her. This brings smiles to the faces of those present, who cannot hide their amusement at her reaction. The room begins to discuss important matters. Esteban is clearly preoccupied with the matter of Count Sickville. The atmosphere in the room becomes serious as the implications of that name are discussed. Mabel watches the situation warily, remaining silent. Duke Javier with red hair offers his solution to the problem, mentioning that the best way out would be to get the Count's hand. His confident expression emphasizes that he intends to insist on his own. His proposal causes obvious confusion among those present, but no one dares to openly object. When someone dares to hint at disagreement with Javier's proposal, he asks with a slight grin if they are okay with his decision. Under pressure, the interlocutors quickly abandon their objections, submitting to his authority and charisma. The Marquis tries to justify the Count, claiming that he only used the money for his own needs and that it cannot be considered a crime. His voice sounds confident, but the look on Esteban and the others' faces suggests that they are not going to turn a blind eye to such behavior. In the courtroom, Duke Javier innocently states that there is no evidence against him. Mabel looks at him with indignation, mentally calling him a hypocrite. Her thoughts revolve around how much money he could have gotten for such an outrage. The girl remembers how Javier always uses his charm and influence to sway decisions in his favor. His smile, demeanor, and the weight of gold on the scales suggest that truth in this world is subordinate to the power of money. Mabel wonders how a man like Javier could have a son like Enrique. The boy often interacts with others in a friendly manner, especially Oscar. His innocence and kind heart are in stark contrast to his father's actions. Mabel looks at Enrique thinking that he is just a child, and the reasons for his father's greed are the magical stones. The girl comes to the conclusion that these rare minerals and their influence are the cause of all the current problems. Magic stones are a rare and valuable resource that is formed from mana. Their production is extremely limited and the price is incredibly high. These are minerals that play a key role in the magical world, which is why their value only increases. Duke Javier has recently gained access to a mine with a large amount of magic stones, but the output is limited and the demand for the stones is increasing. This makes them almost inaccessible to ordinary people, and Javier himself is becoming richer. The nobility has long known about the extraction of magic stones, but only the Marquis dares to object to the Duke's actions. He, like Javier, has his own interests related to magic minerals, which gives rise to a conflict. Mabel hears rumors that the imperial family has large reserves of stones, but they too do not last forever. A triumphant smile plays on Javier's face because he is sure that even the imperial family will one day need his resources. Mabel frowns and decides that she must try to do something. Her determined look tells her that she is not going to stand by and wants to act to stop the injustice. Later that night, Mabel is awakened by strange conversations. She feels uneasy even in the safety of the imperial palace. Her determination and desire to understand what is happening only grows stronger despite her fears. Mabel, a girl with pink hair and big blue eyes, wakes up at night in her cozy but empty house. She hears strange sounds and wonders who could be nearby. Getting out of bed, she begins to explore the house carefully, listening to every rustle, which makes her feel curious and slightly uneasy. Mabel notices movement outside the window and comes closer. There, she sees two large owls talking to each other. The girl realizes that she understands their speech, and her surprise turns into delight. However, the owls, unhappy with the lack of food, fly away in search of food, leaving Mabel to watch thoughtfully. The next morning, Mabel goes outside and sees a ginger cat in the garden complaining loudly about something. While trying to calm him down, she realizes that she can not only hear him, but also communicate with him. This new gift confuses her, but she begins to realize that this is a special ability. Gradually, the girl comes to the conclusion that her unusual abilities are beginning to awaken. She feels something change inside her, as if some magic is awakening, connecting her with the animal world around her. This moment brings her both delight and questions about the origin of the gift. The cat tells her that this is not just a coincidence. He hints at some divine will that chose her for this mission. He promises that in time she will be able to understand the meaning of what is happening and learn to use her gift for the greater good. Mabel wonders why she was chosen. The cat's answer surprises her. God chose her for unknown reasons, but these reasons will definitely be revealed to her in the future. Mabel feels some mystical meaning in this. The cat adds that he, as a divine lion, was sent to protect and help her. He emphasizes the importance of her mission and assures that she will be able to learn to communicate with any living being if she reveals her potential. Although she is only a few years old, the cat assures her that her soul is much older than it appears. He explains that many of the answers to her questions are yet to come, but that it is all part of a greater plan. Mabel listens to his words with growing interest. Gathering her courage, the girl decides to try to use her powers consciously. She prepares to take the first step in mastering her gift, filled with hope and determination to find out what fate has in store for her. This moment becomes a symbol of a new beginning for her. Mabel completes her preparations and, armed with her childish energy, decides to take action. She senses that many challenges lie ahead, but her faith in herself and the support of the mystical lion give her the strength to step into the unknown. Gustav was deep in work trying to sort through the piles of documents that had accumulated on his desk. He let out a tired sigh, realizing that there were no more magic stones. Although the imperial family still had reserves, he knew that they would soon run out. This thought was alarming because without resources, the balance of power could shift against them. Gustav was thinking about what to do next. He was worried about the strengthening of Duke Javier, who could take advantage of this crisis. Dark thoughts were growing, but suddenly a voice broke the silence of the office, bringing him back to reality. Gustav was wary, but he could not even guess who visited him. Mabel flew into the office with a beaming smile and a bouquet of bright flowers. Her energetic appearance instantly destroyed the heavy atmosphere of the room. She approached Gustav, declaring that she had come to help. His surprise turned to slight confusion because he was used to working alone. Mabel confidently took over his office, announcing that it was now her territory. Gustav, although he doubted her ability to keep things in order, could not refuse her sincere impulse. The girl began to sort through papers with enthusiasm, which looked both charming and chaotic. In her enthusiasm, Mabel accidentally dropped several piles of paperwork. Gustav offered to clean it up himself, but she refused, claiming she could handle it. He watched her efforts with a slight smile, although his inner voice insisted that such an arrangement could end in disaster. While examining the contents of the desk, Mabel came across an inkwell. Her curiosity got the better of her common sense, and she opened it unaware of the consequences. Gustav only managed to notice it out of the corner of his eye when the ink spilled onto the desk, soaking important papers. Mabel didn't understand at first, but quickly realized what she had done. She tried to explain that she hadn't expected it to end like this. Gustav, seeing her remorse, held back his displeasure and hurried to find something to clear the documents, although his heart sank with worry. When Gustav left to get a rag, Mabel apologized to him in her thoughts. Her sincerity was reflected in her eyes, but she decided not to waste time. She knew that she had a chance to carry out her plan while the assistant was busy. Mabel, left alone, began to hurriedly sort through the papers. Her determination grew stronger because she knew that she had little time. Her thoughtfulness gave way to concentration, and in these moments she looked almost older than she actually was. Determined to finish her business before Gustav returned, Mabel did not lose confidence. She clutched her bag in her hands and repeated to herself that she had to make it. Her blue eyes sparkled with determination, and her image, full of contrast between childish naivety and inner strength, remained inimitable. Mabel finished writing the important document concerning the purchase of the Southwest mine. Her diligence over the past months had been reflected in this work. Although her handwriting still left much to be desired, she was pleased with the result. Her hands felt weak from the long effort, but pride in the task completed filled her. The girl lifted the document with difficulty, feeling its weight not only physically, but also mentally, because behind each line stood hours of work. She understood that now she had to complete the work attaching the imperial seal. This thought simultaneously inspired and made her nervous. When Mabel finally took hold of the heavy seal, her small hands were barely able to cope with the task. She tried to do everything carefully, but the worries and fatigue made themselves felt. At that moment, the girl felt how great the responsibility placed on her was. The seal was placed and its imprint shone on the paper, symbolizing the completion of the work. But the joy did not last long. Suddenly, she was distracted by a voice that sounded behind her. It turned out that Esteban had come into the office. His appearance caught Mabel off guard. Esteban looked at the girl with interest, trying to understand what had brought her here. His gaze slid over the documents and the seal, and then returned to Mabel. He did not hide his surprise at her efforts, although it unexpectedly touched his heart. Mabel tried to explain her actions, but suddenly she mentioned Gustavo. The name of this man caused a change in Esteban's mood. His gaze became stern and cold. He clearly began to think about something important regarding this mention. Esteban thought about what to do with Gustav. He felt like he had let him down, and now he was thinking about punishment. His face was filled with anger and determination, and the atmosphere around him was tense. He could not allow his subordinates to make mistakes. At that moment, a servant appeared with a large doll intended for Mabel. Seeing the gift, the girl smiled and immediately forgot about all her worries. For her, this gift was an unexpected manifestation of care, which she had been lacking lately. Mabel happily hugged the doll, expressing her gratitude to the servant. Her happiness seemed genuine and contagious. However, Esteban, who was watching the events, continued to maintain a stern look, carefully watching every movement of those around him. Esteban sternly questioned the servant, reproaching him for leaving Mabel unattended. The girl, realizing that the servant could suffer because of her, tried to stand up for him. Her sincerity softened Esteban, and he decided not to punish the servant but hinted that such situations should not be repeated. Mabel, holding a huge stuffed rabbit, tries to please her strict father. Inwardly, she is indignant that he has taken it into his head again, because his whims always create difficult situations. Nevertheless, she decides to act. With words about a gift for the former Emperor Esteban, the girl holds out the rabbit, hoping that it will melt his cold heart. Esteban looks puzzled and clearly did not expect such a gesture. The rabbit in his hands seems to him something touching and unusual, because this is the first time Mabel has decided to give him something from the heart. He looks at the gift and freezes, struck by her sincerity. In his gaze, not only surprise flashes but also deep inner reflection. While Esteban is processing what happened, Mabel decides to distract attention and escape unnoticed. She grabs her assistant Javi by the hand and pulls him along. Her mind is spinning with plans for her escape, while her father is lost in his thoughts. The girl is happy that her little trick worked, and they manage to escape, leaving Esteban alone with his feelings. At this time, Esteban finds a strange package in his hands. He opens it and notices a letter with a seal which arouses his curiosity. He examines the document, trying to understand what this important message is. Various guesses flash through his head, but it is not yet clear what is hidden behind this mysterious message. After studying the letter carefully, he realizes that it is a deal to buy the southwestern Logol mine. It immediately becomes clear to him that this purchase looks strange. The mine is famous only for its low-quality iron, which is hardly valuable. Esteban suspects that there may be more to this than just an economic deal. Esteban's doubts are heightened when he remembers that magical stones were found in the area of the mine. This discovery makes him wonder about the secret plans of those who carried out this deal. He is haunted by the idea that the mine hides not only iron deposits but also much more valuable resources that can change the balance of power. Meanwhile, the mine workers discuss the strangeness of the imperial decree to mine Logol. They point out that the mine is only known for its cheap iron, which the royal family would hardly need. However, forced to follow the order, they continue mining to stay within the law. Suddenly, one of the miners notices something shiny in the depths of the mine. As they get closer, they realize that they have stumbled upon magical stones. The realization of the value of the find astounds them, and the miners realize that their mine can now become the center of new intrigues and great events. At the same time, a mole appears on the surface, as if trying to attract people's attention to the newly discovered treasures. The animal emerges from the ground, spitting out small but dazzlingly shining stones. The miners look at each other in admiration, realizing that they have witnessed an important discovery that will change everything. Esteban, holding the mine document in his hands, begins to put the puzzle together. His suspicions are confirmed, and he realizes that someone is using Logol for the magical stones. An inner sense of unease makes him wonder about who is behind this deal and what role he will play in solving this mystery. Mabel thanks Clot with a tender expression as she sits on the grass in a flowery dress. Her blue eyes sparkle with joy as she looks at the small shiny stones that were handed to her. These stones are truly precious to her hard-won, which makes the moment even more emotionally significant. The girl with a sincere smile offers to keep the promise connected to this land because now it has become theirs. She happily digs in the earth, realizing the importance of each moment. Thoughts flash through her mind about how Gustav has surely fulfilled his task as she expected. Mabel rejoices, thinking that her new ability has proven more useful than she could have ever imagined. Her eyes light up with anticipation, and her mind conjures up an image of an enemy who will no longer be able to triumph. She dreams of the moment when his smug smile disappears from his face, and it fills her with determination. The morning brings a pleasant surprise. The maid delightedly notices that Mabel has already woken up. The girl looks lively and full of energy. The maid admires her good mood, and Mabel herself sincerely enjoys this moment, gaining confidence before the important day. Council day is approaching, and Mabel is full of enthusiasm. She dresses up in a charming dress decorated with flowers and dances down the hallway as if the party has already begun. Images of what her opponent's face will look like appear in her mind, which further fuels her excitement. The excitement is building, and Mabel internally exclaims that she can't wait for it to begin. She hurries to have a snack before the council, thinking about her next steps. Along the way, she is accompanied by confidence that everything is going in her favor, and the coming day will bring her new successes. On the terrace, a familiar voice suddenly calls out to her. Mabel stops surprised, and her heart skips a beat. She sees the figure of a boy appearing before her, and it fills her with immediate anxiety. Her gaze expresses both fear and curiosity. Enlik appears before her, smiling as he explains his presence. His warm tone calms Mabel slightly, and she tries to understand what he wants. He says he wanted to see her, knowing that today is the council, and the girl, still wary, reacts with restraint. Mabel begins to reflect on Enlik's words while remembering her previous plans. She realizes how her thoughts intersect with the vivid images she had just imagined. Her surprise is mixed with a growing sense of guilt for her bold dreams. Seeing Enlik's face, Mabel suddenly realizes how much emotion is hidden behind his words. She offers him something sweet to eat with her, hoping to distract himself from his thoughts. Doubt settles in her heart, but she tries to focus on the moment that can bring her peace. Mabel, with pink hair and sparkling eyes, enjoys a meal in the garden. She is surprised by how small her portion is, but consoles herself with the thought that when she is older, she will be able to eat as much as she wants. Her enthusiasm and determination in the face of a small portion create a light and warm atmosphere. After the meal, Mabel happily declares that everything was delicious. Her genuine delight makes her companion Enrique smile, but suddenly she notices that his plate is untouched and offers to share her food. Enrique smiles softly and explains that he had already eaten before coming here, so he is not hungry at all. His kindness and attention to Mabel create an atmosphere of care and warmth. Mabel, however, notices something strange on his face. The little girl stares at Enrique, seeing a strange mark. She wonders what it could be, and her face shows concern. It seems her intuition tells her that something is wrong with him. Enrique tries to explain that it's just a mosquito bite. He tries to keep his tone light and carefree, but his explanations sound unconvincing. Mabel looks at him suspiciously, still thinking. By repeating the word gnat, Enrique tries to convince Mabel of his version. He even starts playing with her hat to distract her. Mabel still can't shake the feeling that something is wrong with him. Her thoughts take her to a disturbing memory. She feels that the mark on Enrique's face looks more like a blow than an insect bite. Her inner voice doubts his words, creating tension in her thoughts. Despite her doubts, Mabel tries to hope that she is wrong, but her heart is troubled, especially after Enrique changes the subject to something more innocuous, pointing to a bird to distract her. Meanwhile, in the courtroom, the fate of Count Sikilma, who has embezzled state funds, is being discussed. Opinions are divided, but the majority insists on a severe punishment. The atmosphere becomes serious and tense, and the anticipation of the decision is keenly felt. Duke Javier, dressed in his finest robes, supports the majority opinion. His confidence and determination resonate with those present. Meanwhile, Mabel rejoices in the distance, relieved that the difficult decision has finally been made. Javier appears before Mabel, his head bowed modestly. The pink-haired girl notices his submissive appearance and ponders his unexpected reaction. There is surprise in her eyes, and in her thoughts, there are questions about what could make such a strong man look so unusual. Javier suddenly smiles, which confuses Mabel even more. She wonders why his inner state, caused by the magical stones, should fuel anger while he, on the contrary, shows calm and gentleness. This awakens in her a desire to understand his true intentions. Documents with seals appear on the table, raising suspicions. Esteban, the former emperor, demands an explanation from Gustav, hinting that the contents of these papers may be connected to a mine he did not know about. Tension hangs in the air, and the truth seems hidden. Esteban expresses surprise, stating that he knows nothing about the mine. Gustav suggests that it may be the work of nobles dissatisfied with the power of Duke Javier. This idea is suspicious, but it seems to be only part of a larger conspiracy. Esteban analyzes the situation and says that it is impossible to confirm or deny this version. His cold gaze betrays his concern. He notes that the document was approved without his knowledge, which increases suspicions and hints at possible betrayal in their circle. The document appears to have been signed by someone's assistant. Esteban picks it up with irritation and sees illegible handwriting on it. He expresses dissatisfaction, but admits that it is well written, which is even more alarming, and suggests a well-thought-out plan. The possibility that the mine contains magical stones is described. Esteban and Gustav ponder the meaning of the notes, trying to understand who could have written them. The name of the Marquis of Gardenia comes to mind, but this seems unlikely since she has no reason to help the imperial family. Magic stones are shown that look fascinating, but carry a hidden threat. The conversation of the participants gradually reveals that the situation is based on a complex political and magical conspiracy, the consequences of which can be unpredictable for all the characters.